Chapter 316. That damn holy water sect. They were simply intolerable bullies. If it weren't for that icy little girl who shot through the wings of their green-headed eagle, how could the three of them be reduced to such a sorry and pitiful state? Quan Daodong couldn't help but shudder inwardly at the thought of that ruthless little girl. That pair of eyes was too cold, like the rippling waters of the yellow springs, without a trace of human life. When she looked at others, it was as if they were all corpses. Eldest senior brother. Will the green-headed eagle die if we leave it on the mountain? The female disciple from Myriad faction was about to cry. Quan Daodong viciously turned around and glared at her. What else can we do if we don't throw it away? Don't tell me you're going to carry it all the way down the mountain? An eagle without wings had already reached the end of its life. What else could he do other than throw it away? He was so vexed that he was about to die. If Master found out that they had killed one of their sex mounts on a trip, he didn't know how Master would punish them. Eldest senior brother, I'm cold. Let's rest for a night before leaving, the female disciple stammered. Now that they didn't have any mounts, they could only walk or see if they could borrow 2 horses from the villagers. Junior brother who, go knock on the door, Quan Daodong ordered angrily. He really didn't want to talk to this group of ignorant villagers. Each of them was more cowardly than a mouse. They were proper disciples of Myriad faction and didn't eat people. That young disciple called junior brother who hastily went up and knocked on a family's door. Uncle, auntie, open the door. We're disciples of Myriad faction and proper mystic cultivators, not villains. It's too late, so we just want to stay the night. We just want a mouthful of hot soup to drink. After a while, that family didn't respond at all. Junior brother who shook his head and returned in disappointment. He said to the female disciple, Junior sister Jiang, go and try. Perhaps those villagers' hearts would soften if a girl came forward. Junior martial sister Jiang moved her feet and found another house. She gently knocked on the door and roughly said the same thing as junior martial brother who. However, she still returned empty-handed. The three of them stood in the snow, feeling both cold and angry. They looked at each other. At this time the sky was completely dark. Only a few stars flickered in the sky. I'm going to kill them. Quan Daodong fiercely pulled out the long saber at his waist. He took a few steps forward and was about to split open a door. Junior sister Jiang hastily pulled him back. She hugged her arms and shivered in the cold wind. Eldest senior brother. This place isn't far from the Holy Water Sect's mountain gate. If they really cause a ruckus and make the entire Holy Water Sect come out in full force, I definitely won't be their match. At that time, wouldn't we be even more unlucky? That's right, eldest senior brother. Junior sister Jiang is right. Junior brother who took a step forward and hurriedly nodded. It seems that the villagers here are not hospitable people. Why don't we leave? It's too cold near the snow mountain. I think we should leave as soon as possible. Right. As long as we leave the Great Snow Mountains range, it's still June outside. It definitely won't be as abnormally cold as here. Quan Daodong resentfully put away his long saber and coldly glanced in the direction of the Holy Water Sect's mountain gate. Let's go. After the three of them left silently with their tails between their legs, a lithe figure appeared where they left. She sent a message through the sect's messenger talisman. Myriad faction's disciples have left. Chapter 317. Arbor had lived in this small courtyard for nearly 5 years. Winter passed and spring came. Spring left and summer arrived. Her plain clothes remained the same. However, the small courtyard grew more and more prosperous with each passing year. Green vines covered the corners of the walls. A small fence was built around the flower bed, and many flowers suitable for growing in the snow were planted. The small courtyard was filled with greenery. Over the years, Qiao Mu's small body grew bigger and bigger. She had to change clothes every few days. She had told her master that she didn't need so many clothes. Anyway, she cultivated day and night in the mystical treasured land. She didn't need so many clothes, but it still couldn't stop his master's strong desire to dress up his disciple. So much so that many 8 or 9-year-old clothes were left in the box without being worn. Because many times, she would cultivate in seclusion for 3 to 5 to 7 months. Her clothes had shrunk a lot before she came out of the mystical treasured land. She couldn't wear the clothes that her master had changed in advance. It was late at night in the small courtyard. Arbor sat alone in the side room. She held a roll of clean linen in her small hands and helped to bandage the green-headed eagle that was lying on the table. She sprinkled the fine powder on the green-headed eagle's wound. The guy's body that was lying on the table trembled slightly. "Don't move." Arbor patted its head and wrapped the linen around the wound on its wing. "Even if your master didn't dodge that arrow, it wouldn't have hit him." Arbor murmured softly. "I just wanted to scare that guy. I didn't expect him to kick you out." Her small hand stroked the green-headed eagle's head. Arbor stood up and washed her hands in the basin. However, there were too many selfish people in this world. So, Arbor wasn't too surprised at that time. Dong dong dong. There was a hurried knock on the door. Arbor hurriedly picked up the green-headed eagle and stuffed it under the bed. She reached out and knocked on its head twice. "Lie down and don't move." After hiding the green-headed eagle, Arbor stood up and waved his hand. Some fine powder from his fingertips cleared away all traces of blood in the room, leaving only a faint fragrance. The moment Miss Chow opened the door, she saw the kitchen maid, Fat Sis, standing outside her door with a kitchen knife in hand, and second senior sister, Shui Xiao. "Miss Chow, when you went to the kitchen to get the stew, did you see the green eagle that I placed in the corner?" Fat Sis asked in a loud voice. "No," the little stoic replied expressionlessly. Over the years, everyone had completely gotten used to the little fellow's stoic face, so they nodded in response. The kitchen maid angrily turned around with the kitchen knife in her hand. "Miss Shui, it seems that it escaped." He really didn't expect that the green eagle could still run away with its wings injured. "I originally wanted to grind its fur and steam it to add more dishes for the girls." The corner of Arbor's mouth twitched. He looked away expressionlessly and lowered his head. "That's right," Shui Xiao also said angrily. "This little bastard dared to come to our sect and flaunt his prowess, so he should be cooked. He got off easy this time. If I catch him tomorrow, I'll definitely give him to Fat Sis to stew." "Hey!" Fat Sis raised her kitchen knife and left with Shui Xiao. Before she left, she told Arbor to hurry over and eat. "Every time I come to Miss Chow's court, I feel a sweet fragrance assailing my nostrils. Smells so good." Arbor closed the door and looked back at the green-headed eagle that had crawled out from under the bed. His gaze was cold and without any warmth. "You can leave after your wings are healed." Chapter 318. First Peak's morning and evening meals were all eaten in the Eastern Dining Hall. Including Arbor, Murong Sun currently had 154 disciples under her name. Other than some disciples who were still in closed-door cultivation, everyone else was eating together. Everyone could call out each other's names and were very familiar with each other, so the atmosphere was harmonious. "I heard third senior sister came back. She went out to train for so many years, so she's really amazing," a female disciple said with a smile. "I've only seen senior sister Yi once before. She's the same as little junior sister, a cultivation maniac. She's in closed-door cultivation all year round and can't be seen more than a few times. Master is here, master is here," someone hastily called out, and all the whispers stopped as everyone turned to look at the door. Murong Sun walked in with a grin in her purple robes, followed by a woman in yellow who looked to be around 18 or 19 years old. She was Murong Sun's third disciple, Yi Lingmin, who had not returned for many years. "Sit, Lingmin." Murong Sun smiled faintly and led Yi Lingmin to the main table to sit down. Yi Lingmin stood by the table without moving, her gaze coldly landing on the young girl next to her master. That girl sat there without moving, her small hand gently stroking a little chick in her arms. The little chick was lying on its back with a look of enjoyment on its fluffy face. "Third junior sister is back." Su Shanshan stood up and bowed to Murong Sun before turning to nod at Yi Lingmin. Shui Xiao harumphed and pursed her lips disapprovingly. She secretly rolled her eyes at Yi Lingmin before turning around to bow to Murong Sun. "Master, who is this little junior sister?" Yi Lingmin asked, her voice crisp and cold like an icy spring on a tall mountain. "She's here." Shui Xiao was truly amused by her third junior sister's antics. She knew that with third junior sister's proud and arrogant temperament, she would definitely latch onto Jojo without letting go. Murong Sun immediately reached out to stroke the little girl's head with a grin. This is your little junior sister, Arbor, my last disciple. Yi Lingmin chuckled and looked at Arbor with crossed arms. I heard on the way here that little junior sister has already advanced to a level 7 mystic cultivator not long after entering the sect 4 years ago. However, after nearly 5 years you've only advanced by 1 level, right? When everyone heard this, their expressions changed slightly. These words were not pleasant to hear. Little junior sister's aptitude was obvious to all. Although she had only advanced by 1 level in the past few years, she was now a level 8 mystic cultivator. However, she had already broken through to become a level 8 mystic cultivator at the age of a hairpin, so she was completely qualified to be called a genius. Indeed, Arbor didn't get angry. He just stared coldly at Yi Lingmin. She knew her body very well. Most of the Xian energy that she had absorbed in the mystical treasured land all these years went into Little Tree's stomach. A small portion was used by her to train her branch meridians. Right now, her first branch meridian was half a finger wide, so she could smoothly condense Mystic Conscious and use it to control the apparition of Mystic Conscious in her conscious for daily cultivation. A normal Mystic cultivator's condensed Mystic Conscious definitely wouldn't exceed 10% of their mystic energy in the initial stage. After repeated training, it basically wouldn't exceed 50%. Those who could reach 60% were already abnormal. In other words, a level 8 mystic cultivator's mystic conscious basically wouldn't exceed level 4. However, Arbor was different. Arbor could condense 100% of all the mystic energy in her branch meridians into mystic conscious. Even so, she didn't use any of the mystic energy in her main meridian. Hence, although she was only a level 8 mystic cultivator, her mystic conscious had already reached level 8. This was absolutely inconceivable. A level 8 mystic cultivator has the qualifications to fight with me. Yi Lingmin suddenly moved and kicked the stool in front of her. The 4th watch ends today. See you tomorrow. Chapter 319. Yi Lingmin's sudden attack caught everyone off guard. No one expected that Yi Lingmin would suddenly throw a stool at little junior sister for no reason during a meal. Those who understood little junior sister's temperament couldn't help but cover their faces as they watched the stool fly towards little junior sister's head. Although third senior sister was very strong, little junior sister was never someone to be trifled with. Bang! The stool was smashed apart by a wave of mystic energy and turned into wooden splinters in midair. Arbor coldly looked at Yi Lingmin. Caw! The little chick's feathers bristled and it jumped onto the table. Arbor moved in that instant. Murong Sun was about to grab her youngest disciple when she saw the little fellow dashing over like a streak of light. The speed was so fast that it simply caused everyone present to be speechless. Murong Sun was stunned for a second before hastily standing up. However, she saw Miss Chow leap in front of Yi Lingmin and elbowing her in the chest without another word. Yi Lingmin's pupils contracted, and she released mystic energy around her body. She thought she could force Miss Chow back several steps with this. However, things didn't go as planned. Not only was Miss Chow not repelled by her mystic energy, but she also took a few steps closer and heavily landed her elbow on Yi Lingmin's chest. Yi Lingmin felt pain in her chest, and she nimbly retreated backwards. At the same time, Arbor lightly leaped again and leaped into the air. Levitating was something every level 7 mystic cultivator could do. The only difference was how long they could levitate. People with solid mystic energy foundations could levitate for a bit longer without a problem, but those without enough mystic energy naturally couldn't support levitating for a long time. Yi Lingmin couldn't help but smile when she saw little junior sister levitating. She originally wanted to say, "Little junior sister, levitating isn't anything strange." However, when her gaze landed on the next scene, and she discovered that the little figure levitating in the air suddenly disappeared in front of her, she was completely dumbfounded. Collective gasps came from the dining hall. Everyone saw with their own eyes that the little fellow's figure abruptly turned from in front of senior sister Yi to behind her. Some disciples couldn't help but exclaim, "Senior sister Yi." Yi Lingmin also felt a trace of danger on the spot, and all the hairs on her body stood on end. When she suddenly turned her head, she met her junior sister's cold eyes. She was caught off guard and a heavy punch landed on her back, sending her flying forward. Bang! The first table was destroyed by the surge of profound energy. Bang bang! The second and third tables were continuously shattered into pieces by the surging profound energy. It wasn't until Yi Lingmin's body hit the fifth round table that she smashed the table to the ground with a bang. Yi Lingmin pressed on her sprained neck, unable to control the shock in her heart. Abruptly turning her head, she saw a plain silhouette suddenly pounce on her. Half of the silhouette's body was on top of her, and the little hand was tightly holding a pair of bamboo chopsticks, fiercely aiming at her eyes. "Do you want to die?" Little junior sister's cold voice suddenly resounded in the dining hall, which was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. The end of the bamboo chopsticks was only a millimeter away from Yi Lingmin's bulging eyeballs. She could clearly see every grain on the bamboo chopsticks. Yi Lingmin was scared stiff on the spot and subconsciously closed her eyes, cold sweat pouring down her body. Murong Sun nearly choked on her own saliva. Oh my, the two disciples started fighting each other. Chapter 320. Shuexiao stood on the side with a chuckle and crossed her arms. She calmly looked at her proud and arrogant third junior sister. Haha, you kicked an iron plate. Small fry. You started a fight as soon as you arrived, right? You're out of luck. Shuexiao and Su Shanshan usually sparred with the little fellow, so they naturally understood their little junior sister's actual combat level. If you think little junior sister is merely a level 8 mystic cultivator, then you're not far from death. Little junior sister didn't just comprehend the ultimate technique of levitating and teleporting in actual combat. Even Master once said that although she and senior sister Su had broken through to become great level 10 mystic cultivators, they might not be able to defeat little junior sister in terms of actual combat ability even if they worked together. From this, it could be seen that the portion little junior sister displayed was definitely not her full strength. Perhaps only Master knew how many trump cards little junior sister had, and what level of actual combat ability she had. Murong Sun's figure fluttered and arrived in front of her youngest disciple. She pulled the little fellow to her side and stroked her head. All right, good child. Don't be angry with your third senior sister. Your third senior sister doesn't have any bad intentions. She just has high standards and an eccentric personality. You can just beat her to vent your anger, but you mustn't beat her to death. We're going to fight the 5 factions in 2 months, so if you injure her, we'll lose a fighting force. Be good and eat with Master. You must be starving, little fellow. Yi Lingmin had just recovered from the shock of being defeated by little junior sister, but then she was struck by Master's words until she was utterly disheartened. That wasn't Master's heart too biased. Anyone could tell who was Master's true disciple, and who was a fake disciple that she picked up. Yi Lingmin felt extremely stifled and struggled to stand up from the ground. Her pretty face darkened as she said, I request to fight again. Murong Sun's face also darkened. She turned around and yelled at her third disciple, Can't you have a proper meal? If you don't want to eat, then get out. Don't cause trouble here. Look at how many tables and chairs you've smashed. You'll have to find someone to fix them again tomorrow. You'll have to pay for the repairs. Yi Lingmin's face turned completely green. Did she smash the tables and chairs? Okay, she was the one who smashed it. But why? That was because she was punched out by little junior sister, okay? Logically speaking, she shouldn't be the one to take the blame. Master, I don't believe you. I'm a level 10 mystic cultivator. There's no way I'll lose to her. Yi Lingmin stiffened her neck and refused to back down. Su Shanshan sighed. She stepped forward and gently tugged at her. She patted her shoulder and said, Third junior sister, this isn't a matter of cultivation level. In fact, even I am not junior sister's match. Yi Lingmin turned to stare at Su Shanshan in shock. After a while she sneered, Liar. Eldest senior sister, you must have deliberately gone easy on her. Because she was the little junior sister. Because she was the little junior sister that Master doted on the most. So all of you must be impatient to befriend her. Murong Sun's face completely darkened, and she coldly stared deeply at Yi Lingmin. She snorted and said, It looks like you haven't improved at all after going out for so many years. Now immediately go to Sky Peak's Duantian Cliff and reflect on your past. If you can't figure out why Master wants you to face the wall for 1 day, then you'll stay there for 1 day. If you can't figure it out in 2 days, then you'll stay there for 2 days. If you can't figure it out in 8 to 10 years, then you'll face the wall for 8 to 10 years. Scram. Yiling Min's eyes misted over, and she stared deeply at Murong Sun. She abruptly stomped her feet and ran out of the dining room. Chapter 321. When the disciples saw their master getting angry, they all kept quiet out of fear and stood there with their heads bowed, not daring to make a sound. Only a crisp and cold voice rang out. She's so slow-witted that she might not be able to figure it out even after 100 years. Did you want her to pass away in a sitting posture there by throwing her on that cliff? What cliff? Everyone. Little junior sister's venomous mouth was truly unparalleled. She either acted like a saw-toothed gourd all day and didn't utter a word, or she would make people feel uncomfortable all over and so ashamed that they wished for nothing more than to find a hole to crawl into. Murong Sun looked back at her little disciple with a stifled heart and walked up to hold her little hand. Can't you comfort, master? Arbor shook his little head. If she wasn't your disciple, I would have had 100 ways to kill her in 3 breaths. Everyone stared dumbfoundedly at this little junior sister who only reached their shoulders. All the disciples of First Peak knew that the little stoic never told a lie. Since she said it, it was naturally the truth. It was also because little junior sister went easy on her when she saw the abnormally dangerous and quick battle just now. However, third senior sister was completely unaware and didn't even appreciate it. There was nothing wrong with being arrogant in itself, but being arrogant to the point of being condescending and blindly arrogant and conceited was a bit unreasonable. Murong Sun only wanted her third disciple to understand that there was always someone better than her in this world. Murong Sun was a bit disappointed that her temper still couldn't be properly ground down after having people accompany her for so many years. Among her 4 personal disciples, her eldest disciple, Su Shanshan, had a cold and apathetic personality. Her talent and strength were decent, but she could stick to her nature and treat people very mildly. She wouldn't be overly arrogant and conceited. Her second disciple, Xue Xiao, had a bit of a reckless and impulsive personality. Thankfully, she was obedient and could strictly abide by her master's orders and restrain herself. Murong Sun only wanted to sigh when her third disciple, Yiling Min, was mentioned. Yiling Min was originally excessively arrogant, and she didn't know what she experienced after being sent out for so many years, but her temper didn't improve at all. Instead, she became even more rampant. Among the 4 disciples, the one who was the most reassuring and also the most heartbreaking was probably her youngest disciple. Although this child was young, she was extremely intelligent. Although her temperament was cold, her interpersonal skills were not inferior to that of an adult. She did not need to worry too much about anything. It was also because of this that Murong Sun's heart ached for her youngest disciple even more. Dinner was disrupted, and everyone could only squeeze at the remaining few round tables to have a simple meal. After that, Murong Sun announced the name list for this year's 3 sects and 5 factions competition. Each of the 3 peaks sent out 10 disciples, making a total of 30 people to participate in the competition. Yiling Min's name was removed from the list of 30 names by Murong Sun. When Yiling Min heard the news, she did not eat or drink for 5 days and 5 nights at Duantian Cliff. She knelt and did not get up until she fainted. When someone informed Xiao Mu of this news, the little stoic merely lifted her eyelids indifferently. She then closed the book in her hand and stood up to leave gracefully. Several days later, all of the Holy Water Sect's disciples from the 3 peaks who were heading to Xixia Valley to participate in the competition were gathered in the open space in front of the sect master's peak's bamboo building. The girls, who were around 20 years old on average, all stood in front of the bamboo building with graceful figures and high spirits. Faint confident smiles hung on their lips. The sect master stood in front of everyone with a benevolent countenance and said with a chuckle, "Children, you will depart for Xixia Valley in 3 days to represent our holy water sect in this competition." Chapter 322. Before this sect master will allow you all to head to the lowest level of the mystical treasured land. I implore Lady Holy Water to bestow a drop of holy water to each of you. The sect master said with a grin as she lovingly looked at these young grand disciples with outstanding talent. When the sect master finished speaking, wild joy appeared on all the disciples' faces. The senior and junior sisters from the 3 peaks all looked at each other, and they could see a trace of joy spreading from each other's eyes. Only the little stoic expressionlessly stood in First Peak's team behind Su Shanshan and Xue Xiao. She coldly stared ahead without a trace of joy in her eyes. The disciples from the 3 peaks stood in 3 rows, and the little stoic stood in the 3rd row of the 1st row. Standing in the same row as the little stoic was 2nd peak's disciple, Chang Yushi. She was also one of 2nd peak's peak master, Yang Shirong's personal disciples. Miss Chang stealthily peeked at the little stoic and suddenly cleared her throat. Sect master. This disciple heard that people from the 5 factions will also participate in this 3-sect competition. The competition is abnormally intense. The disciples our sect sent to participate in the competition are mostly mystic cultivators level 10 and above. But among them, little junior sister, this level 8 mystic cultivator, seems to have replaced 1st peak senior sister Ye's spot. This seems to be a bit against the rules. In the 2nd row of the 3rd row, a 15-year-old girl in red hastily turned her head to look at the aloof and expressionless Miss Chow. The sect leader made an sound, and just as she was about to say something to smooth things over, she heard a clear and cold voice. Senior sister, do you want to spar with me? Murong Soon's lips twitched when she heard this. Chang Yushi crossed her arms in front of her chest and turned to Arbor with a light chuckle. Could it be that little junior sister can voluntarily withdraw from the team this time if she loses? What if senior sister loses? The little girl also turned her icy face and expressionlessly looked at Chang Yushi in front of her. Chang Yushi inexplicably felt a chill invade her body. If senior sister loses, then of course I'll accept my loss and be your follower for the rest of the journey. What do you think? After he finished speaking, his eyes flashed craftily. His fist was wrapped in profound energy and he quickly swung it in front of Arbor. Arbor neither dodged nor evaded. He directly stretched out a white and tender fist and collided with the fist. In a split second, the fluctuation of profound energy caused a violent gust of wind to blow, causing everyone's clothes and hair to flutter high up in the air. Yang Shirong raised her head to take a look, only to see that idiot disciple of hers flying out of the sky like a deflated ball, drawing a perfect arc in the air before crashing into the sovereign's bamboo forest with a loud boom. The sect master's expression changed immediately. He slapped his thigh and rushed into the bamboo forest anxiously. Oh my bamboo! The disciples of the 3 peaks stared at the little girl with their mouths agape. None of them made a sound for a long time. It wasn't until the sect master angrily returned with Chang Yushi in tattered clothes that all the disciples recovered from their shock. Their gazes uniformly turned towards the unlucky Chang Yushi. Oh my waist! Chang Yushi placed one hand on her waist, her entire face scrunched up as she whined, Little junior sister, you're too ruthless. Fine, senior sister lost. Senior sister accepts her loss and will be your follower from now on. Yang Shirong covered her face with her hands and thought, how did I end up with such a foolish disciple like you? I don't need it. These 3 cold words immediately petrified everyone present. Chapter 323. Chang Yushi struggled to get down from the sect master's hand. She clutched her waist with one hand and stared at Arbor with wide eyes. Little junior sister, why don't you need it? I'm someone who accepts defeat and dares to admit defeat. What a waste of food. Miss Chow threw Chang Yushi an emotionless gaze before spreading her arms and flying out. With 2 whooshing sounds, the delicate and small figure instantly leaped onto several tall bamboo tips. Her toes lightly tapped on them, and she swiftly disappeared before everyone's eyes. Wow, what a fast speed. Is she really only a level 8 mystic cultivator? The disciples whispered into each other's ears, their gazes deeply fixated in the direction of their little junior sister's departure. Yang Shirong clasped her hands and looked up at the sky with a bitter expression. She was originally my disciple. In the afternoon, Arbor received news that she was to head to the mystical treasured land. Several years ago, the little girl who needed her master's help to successfully reach the mystical treasured land was now able to enter and exit the treasured land on her own, without needing anyone's assistance. When she bent down and entered the cave in the mountain wall, she discovered that all the senior sisters who had gathered together in the morning had arrived. Everyone was gathered in 2s and 3s, talking excitedly about something. When Arbor entered the cave, all the voices abruptly stopped. At this time, a little girl with a round face and dressed in bright red ran out from the 3rd Peaks team. She grinned as she walked up to Arbor with her hands clasped behind her back, completely ignoring her cold face. She pointed at herself and asked, "Do you still recognize me? You are Doya from the Alava tribe." The little stoic gazed at her. Doya immediately smiled sweetly, and the small dimple on her left cheek deepened. "Little junior sister, I've heard a lot about you. Please take care of me in the future." Doya cupped her fists and raised them slightly as she looked at Arbor with a chuckle. A faint, almost imperceptible smile slid across Arbor's lips, and she lowered her head to glance at Doya's hand. "I didn't expect it to be nearly 5 years since we parted at the mountain gate." Doya pulled her little hand and walked towards the third peak's team. "Little junior sister, although you're not on the third peak, all the senior sisters on the third peak know about you. Especially senior sister Lee. She praises you in front of us every day. You're the best junior sister in her heart. All of us added together can't compare to you." The senior sister Li Doya mentioned was Li Ling, who had participated in the Qinghe town operation with Arbor and the others. At this moment, Li Ling ran over and patted Doya's head lightly. "What nonsense are you talking about in front of junior sister?" After saying that, she turned to Arbor and smiled. "Junior sister, ignore her. We haven't seen each other for a long time. Let's go and have a chat with senior sister Yugai." "Aha!" The sect leader deliberately raised her voice, causing everyone to stop what they were doing and look at her in unison. The sect leader and the 3 peak leaders stepped into the cave one after another. Looking at the 30 energetic young faces in front of them, they smiled and nodded in satisfaction. "Children, follow me to the lowest level right now." The sect leader looked at them and remember, you can only beg once. If Lady Holy Water rejects you, you must not pester her and continue begging to avoid negative consequences. "Yes," the disciples answered in unison. Afterwards, they turned around and followed the sect leader and the 3 peak leaders into the underground passage. Chapter 324. It was also Arbor's first time going to the 3rd floor of the mystical treasure land. She usually cultivated on the 2nd floor and had never set foot on the 3rd floor. As they descended the stone steps, everyone held their breaths and did not dare to make any noise. At the entrance to the 3rd floor, everyone was blocked in front of a huge circular stone slab. The sect master and the 3 peak masters worked together to inject dark force into the stone slab. For dark forces formed 4 corners and twisted the stone slab slowly. After a series of creaking sounds, the stone slab suddenly opened inwards. "Come in," the sect master ordered, and everyone hurriedly followed in. When Xiaomu saw so many people squeezing forward, she retreated backwards. Only after everyone had rushed in did she slowly enter. Raising his eyes to look around, his gaze indifferently swept across the entire cave. This stone cave was not much different from the place she cultivated on the 2nd floor. The only difference was that it was extremely cold here, much colder than the 2nd floor. There was an oval platform in the middle with a few flights of stairs. A circle of stone troughs was lit with flames, illuminating the entire cave. The 30 disciples all stared at the oval platform in the middle. There was an offering table on it with 3 animals, fruits, and vegetables. A blue ball of water, the size of 2 fists, was swaying in the middle of the offering table. It trembled slightly and emitted a faint light. A female disciple swallowed her saliva and was the first to rush forward. She knelt down in front of the offering table and kowtowed. "Lord Holy Water, please give me a drop of holy water. I will engrave it in my heart and will never forget Lord Holy Water's gift." Arbor only felt that the scene was a little funny. Why did she kneel down and kowtow without saying anything? That the ball of water did not respond at all. It kept rolling on the offering table, and the small ball of water emitted a faint halo. After a long time, the group of female disciples below looked at each other and secretly raised their heads to look at their master. "Cough, child, come down." The sect master shook her head. The female disciple failed to beg for water and ran down the stairs while wiping her tears. She rushed to the back of the group with a grief-stricken look. Arbor only felt that it was very strange. Wasn't it just a drop of water? Beg for what? Beg my ass. Sigh. Lady Holy Water is becoming more and more arrogant and unapproachable. The sect master sighed emotionally. "Lady Holy Water, I'm Doya. I hope you can give me a drop of God's water. I want to represent the sect in battle." I want to raise my cultivation level before the battle. Thank you, Lady Holy Water. Doya cheerfully finished what she wanted to say and stared with wide eyes at the gently trembling water ball on the offering table. Gulp. The crowd, who thought that the holy water was still unresponsive, watched as the ball of water began to sway. The round water ball gradually stretched and turned into the shape of a water droplet. Suddenly, an opening appeared in front of the water droplet, as if the water droplet had opened its mouth and spat out a small water droplet. The sparkling water droplet swayed in the air and flew into Doya's hands, who was holding it with a smile on her face. Doya hurriedly took out the bottle that she had prepared beforehand and filled it with a drop of water. She hugged and kissed the bottle happily. Master, I got a drop of God's water. Doya looked back at Lu Yun happily. Lu Yun had a smile on her face as she thought that her disciple was indeed a good child with good fortune. Arbor only felt that it was a little shocking and turned his face to the side expressionlessly. Chapter 325. Next, all the senior sisters began to show off their abilities and asked for the blessing of the holy water. The scene made people laugh a few times. One of the big sisters hugged the leg of the offering table and cried for the blessing of the holy water, as if she was going to save the whole world. However, the holy water did not respond at all. This big sister should have left, but she insisted on showing her existence in front of the holy water. In the end, she was dragged away by the second peak's peak master, Yang Shirong, with a dark face. When she was being dragged away, the big sister was crying the entire way. She grabbed onto the legs of the senior sisters and hugged them like pillars, making the senior sisters feel extremely embarrassed. In the end, Yang Shirong couldn't take it anymore. She slapped the devilish brat's head, knocking her unconscious before dragging her away. Arbor was speechless. She finally realized that the second peak was a place that specialized in producing funny people. The process of the first peak's disciples begging for water was more normal. However, what angered Xiao Mu was that even her eldest senior sister, Su Shanshan, did not obtain a single drop of that lousy water's gift. Only 2 people in the entire first peak received a drop of water. How preposterous! Thus, Miss Chao's impression of the holy water rose from disdain to disgust. Out of the 29 senior sisters, only 9 had asked for the holy water. Regarding this, the sect master even heaved a sigh of relief and happily told everyone that the holy water was in a good mood today. Arbor could only chuckle in response. Suddenly, everyone turned to look at her. Xiao Mu was baffled as she stood there without moving. Su Shanshan hurriedly said, "Little junior sister, it's your turn. Go." Doya clenched her fists at her and encouraged her. "Little junior sister, work hard and beg the holy water. You can definitely do it." Arbor did not even think of begging that Sundra holy water. Hehe, would she beg someone? What a joke. Even in her previous life, she had never begged for anything. Now she wanted to beg for a drop of water? Humph. Go wherever you want to go. No need. Xiao Mu was disinterested, and she turned around to leave. However, after taking a small step, she could not move forward no matter how hard she tried. Her entire body stiffly turned her back to everyone, and she forcefully dragged her small steps. Fucking hell, it didn't move. Only she knew that her feet were entangled by a transparent tree vine, and she was not allowed to move no matter what. What the hell? Ball is starting to trick its owner again. Master Silver, go. Don't be a coward, go up and take down that ball of water. Wah, that's holy water that's hard to come by in 10,000 years. Oh, you're just a tree. Yet you're actually howling like a wolf. Do you have to be so excited? Besides, who was scared? Which eye of yours saw that I was a coward? That's called disdain. How could the other people in the sect know about the little girl's current situation? They even surrounded her and tried to persuade her. Little junior sister, this is necessary. My dear disciple, the divine water you obtained here is different from the divine water you fused with the mountain gate a few years ago. This concentration is more than 8 times that of yours. 1 drop is equivalent to the 8 drops you had back then, so don't foolishly give up on this opportunity. Yang Shirong's earnest advice was immediately met with an eye roll from Murong Sun. Who are you calling your disciple? Taking in random disciples all day long, how many years has it been? Murong Sun harumphed. Miss Chao pulled back her steps and turned around with a dark face, glaring at that drop of water with a sharp gaze. Why did she feel like little junior sister came with ill intentions? All the disciples took 2 steps back. Arbor ran up the steps and waved her hand, and the black ferrule appeared in her hand. The sect master and the 3 peak masters were stupefied and reached out their hands at the same time with trepidation. Chapter 326. Give me 8 drops of water. I'll beat you to death if there's one less. Without another word, she swung her ferrule at the water droplet's head. Everyone stared at her dumbstruck. Was this the attitude one should have when asking for holy water? No. The sect master stretched out her hand and watched as her little granddisciple swung her ferrule at Lady Holy Water's water droplet's head. Guru. Guru. If the water droplet had fur, it would definitely be bristling right now. Bold. Bold little girl. She dared to hit Lady Holy Water. The little girl was so fresh. Her body was filled with Lady Holy Water's favorite moisturizing scent. She smelled so good. TSK. It would be great to use her as Lady Holy Water's host. A water droplet swayed and abruptly pounced at the little girl. Arbor furrowed her brows and reflexively stroked her chest. She seemed to feel a burning sensation quietly rising. What are you doing? Murong Sun's face darkened, and she threw a ball of mystic energy at the water droplet without a second thought. However, in the blink of an eye, the water droplet had already touched Arbor's small hand at close range. A cold and seeping aura instantly spread out and wrapped around her, directly drilling into the skin of her palm. Ha, Master. This idiot wants to use you as a host. Great. I'll drag it to the star domain while I'm at it. The sapling shouted excitedly. She was originally pondering how to trick it into coming here, but all her worries were gone now. That's why it's called courting death. Very good. Remember to beat it to death for me. Arbor was expressionlessly enveloped by the enlarged water droplet, and her vision was hazy and transparent. Suddenly, the large transparent water droplet enveloping Arbor was grabbed by 2 tender tree branches and fiercely pulled. Lady Holy Water dumbfoundedly discovered that she had been pulled into a pitch-black star domain in the blink of an eye. Who? Who could actually grab Lady Holy Water's transparent body? In the distance there was only a faintly shining star to the left. A strange tree that was shaking its leaves and swaying excitedly appeared in front of her. The tree was not tall, its leaves were green, and its branches were very thin and soft. You, who are you? What is this place? The droplet of water admitted defeat and shrunk itself to the size of a fist, drifting back and forth in the dark galaxy. How dare you? Let me out. How dare you be rude to Lady Holy Water? Arbor secretly observed the Dantian star field. He was almost flipped over by Lady Holy Water's soft and cute voice. The little tray ant jumped down from its main body and swung its arms proudly. It grinned sinisterly at Lady Holy Water before pouncing on the little tray ant and punching it. In the outside world, Murong Sun nervously grasped her youngest disciple's hand and looked back and forth. Jojo, do you feel uncomfortable anywhere? Arbor shook his head. Where's Lady Holy Water? Doya blinked curiously and asked the question in everyone's mind. Arbor's face was stoic, so no one could discern anything from his face. The sect master and the others were all confused. Arbor used his inner vision and saw that the arrogant divine water droplet was almost unrecognizable from the sapling's beating, so he aloofly transmitted his voice to the sapling to stop. Accept your fate, Mwaha. Chocho smugly grinned. Hurry up and give your essence water to my master, or else I'll kill you. The fist-sized water droplet shook its small body. Chapter 327. Gurgle. The little water blob flickered with blue light for a while. Seeing that the violent little tray ant was about to rush up and beat it to death, the little water blob shrank back in fright and let out a pitiful sob. It looked quite pitiful. The little tray ant had just slowed down when it heard its master's cold voice. Don't be fooled by it. It's just pretending to be weak. This arrogant water blob called itself Lord Holy Water all day long. Such a narcissistic water droplet couldn't be subdued so easily. As it spoke, the little water blob suddenly swelled, and a blue aqua-colored light shot out from the inside of the water blob, heading straight for the tray ant. With a howl, Chocho charged forward without dodging or evading. Fuck! It actually wanted to attack Lord Chocho in the star field. It was simply wishful thinking, brainless and uncultured. The little water blob stared at the tray ant, dumbfounded. Huh? That fellow actually completely ignored its water wave attack and directly passed through the blue light of the holy water, arriving in front of it in an instant. How can this be? The little water blob let out a soft and cute voice. Chocho then stepped on the bottom of its foot, and a tree branch stretched out, whipping that blob of water. Who told you to act? Who told you to be dishonest? Don't you know? In this star field, other than Master, I'm the boss. I'm God. Its smugness shot straight to the 9 heavens, and no one could compare to it. Stop hitting, it hurts, sob, sob, sob. The water blob pitifully begged for mercy. Master, I know I was wrong. Please tell the tray ant to stop hitting me. Who's the tray ant? This guy was asking for a beating. Who's your master? Miss Chow's cold voice rang out. Chocho, throw it out. But master, this is holy water that's hard to find in 10,000 years. If master fuses with it, you'll definitely throw it out. Arbor's voice grew colder and colder. This was an unquestionable tone. Chocho immediately agreed obediently. Otherwise, with little master's ruthlessness, if it didn't listen to her, it was very likely that it would be thrown out as well. To Arbor, this was his sex treasure, not hers. This drop of water was an eyesore to her, so she could just beat it up to vent her anger. How could she take the divine object of her sect as her own? Oh, that's right. Remember to give me 8 drops of holy water. Miss Chow's voice was indescribably cold and emotionless. The water ball suddenly shuddered. Suddenly, there was a gurgling sound, and a drop of clear and flawless water separated from the ball of water. It was shining with a sparkling blue light, and it shook a little. With a whoosh, it flew straight into Arbor's mystic ruins. At the same time, the little tree Chocho automatically opened its roots at the speed of light, revealing the Dantian's mystic domain buried inside the roots. It happily accepted this drop of lifeblood essence water that had rushed over. The two worked well together, and Arbor couldn't stop them even if he wanted to. The moment the lifeblood essence entered the mystic domain, it blended perfectly with her Dantian, becoming one with her without any hindrance. Arbor stared blankly. She didn't even feel the slightest bit of discomfort, as if this drop of lifeblood essence belonged to her from the moment it was born. The pitch-black star field suddenly lit up. Arbor used this opportunity to see a fist-sized star hanging high in the center of the star field within the boundless star field. It was the main star. Her sharp eyes discovered that the main star was surrounded by 4 stars of almost the same size but of different colors. Chapter 328. Among them, one blue star was especially eye-catching. When her gaze rested on this blue star, her heart nearly skipped a beat, and an indescribable surge of emotion instantly swelled up her entire heart. It seemed something was about to overflow from the tip of her heart, making her wish for nothing more than to shout out loud. However, the entire star domain only faintly lit up for an instant before slowly dimming again. Chocho's somewhat tired voice rang out in her mind. Master, my current ability is only enough for you to take a look at the entire star domain. I'm a bit sleepy right now, so I might need to sleep for a while. This life essence water, I will temporarily seal it in your mystic ruins. You need to slowly fuse with it. The essence water's power is very rich, so you might need 1 to 2 months to completely assimilate it. The sapling murmured softly. After completely assimilating the essence water, Master will probably be able to break through to become a level 10 great mystic cultivator and completely open your inner world. Arbor's gaze relaxed slightly, and he couldn't help but ask softly, Chocho, how long are you going to sleep for? It will take about 2 to 3 months, maybe longer. The sapling's sleepy voice rang out. I used up a lot of energy dragging the sacred water into the star domain. I didn't feel it earlier, but now I feel more and more sleepy. Arbor, cough, you're probably tired from beating it up. You were so overbearing just now, beating the little water droplet until it cried for its parents and instantly cementing your position as the boss. Master, I can't drag you into Paradise Planet in these 2 to 3 months. You have to be careful and don't make me worry. Arbor's heart warmed slightly, but he also felt that this childish tone was a bit funny. You should worry about yourself. Go into seclusion properly and don't think so much. I can handle it myself. Shda. Chocho didn't say anything. Arbor somewhat worriedly opened his inner vision and glanced at his dantian. He saw that the sapling's branches and leaves had all gathered together like a tree ball, completely enveloping itself. Even that lively treant was currently lying on its back at the foot of the sapling, completely motionless. The sapling had once said that it was probably still in the early stages of its infancy. When the divine water entered her mystic domain, it would definitely nourish the growth of the little tree's roots. Otherwise, it would not want to go into seclusion so quickly. Oh no, how do I get this drop of water out? Arbor's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly thought of this. This was a divine object that everyone in the sect worshipped like an ancestor. Yet, he had placed it in his Dantian's mystic ruin realm. This method was too unkind. Master, I can go out by myself. Steamed Bun's soft and cute voice sounded. Then you can leave. Arbor calmly retracted her inner vision. Only then did she discover that her master and senior martial sister Sue were holding her hand and gently shaking it with slightly anxious expressions. She had been immersed in her inner vision for so long that she did not even remember that she was still in the cave of the mystical treasure. It's all right, master and senior sister. Arbor hurriedly gave them a reassuring look. Murong Sun asked with a dark face, what did the holy water do to you just now? Swoosh. A ball of watery light suddenly appeared in the air and floated next to Arbor's ear, emitting a watery blue light. Everyone's hands trembled defensively, and they assumed an attack posture. However, when they saw that it was Lady Holy Water, they all breathed a sigh of relief and lowered their arms one after another. Gurgle. Suddenly, four chubby lotus-like little hands and feet extended from both sides of the ball of water. Chapter 329. Immediately afterward, the top of the water blob swayed, and a small head that looked like an onion poked out of the water blob. It stretched its limbs and turned into a transparent little onion person. Wow! Looking at this chubby and smooth little onion head person, all the Holy Water sect's female disciples' hearts nearly melted from her cuteness. So Lady Holy Water's original form was such an adorable little water doll. Master! The little water doll's naked body fluttered onto Arbor's shoulder. Its transparent arms hugged her neck and rubbed against her head. Xiaomu only felt goosebumps erupt all over her body. This soft little thing was cold and slippery as it lay on her shoulder, making her think of a creature that lived in the dark, a snake. She disliked snakes the most. This would make certain memories that she had purposely forgotten rush back to her. It would make her remember bits and pieces of her previous life when she was locked up in a dark cage by that perverted friend. They let in a lot of soft and slimy snakes. They slithered inside the cage, burrowed in and out of her body and legs, gnawed at her, bit her, and devoured her. Was she afraid? Was she afraid? No, she wasn't afraid. She wasn't afraid at all. She would kill them. Those filthy and dark creatures were only worthy of being ground into the mud. She would crush them beneath her feet for all eternity. They would never be able to harm her in the slightest. Arbor stood there petrified. Her hands were tightly clasped together and dug into her palms. She did not notice that beads of blood had seeped out. Chow Chow. Murong Sun immediately noticed Chow Chow's abnormality and grabbed her hand. When that gentle warmth enveloped her hand, Xiao Mu immediately peeled herself out from her wandering soul heart palpitation state. Suddenly, her gaze was as cold as an arrow and abnormally vicious as it shot towards a certain adorable creature lying on her shoulder. Under everyone's stupefied gazes, Arbor ruthlessly slapped that adorable transparent water doll and sent it flying. The water doll fell to the ground with a splash and turned into a drop of water. Scram! Following that cold shout, the entire place was silent and flabbergasted. Everyone kept quiet out of fear as they looked at their junior sister. At that moment, the little water droplet felt that its heart was about to break. Master's fierce and terrifying gaze was filled with hatred and loathing. What a hateful gaze! It was divine water, so it didn't have a fixed form. It didn't hurt, but it felt uncomfortable. Xiao Mu darted out of the cave in a flash, and ran out of the mystical treasured land in a sorry state. Too cold, this place was too cold. Once the cold aura enveloped his entire body, he simply couldn't disperse it. She thought that she had overcome this coldness after so many years. She could even let go of herself and cultivate in seclusion in the extremely cold mystical treasured land for so many years. However, once one of her memories was triggered, all the dark and cold things that were buried deep within her would come back to haunt her. Master, I was wrong. I shouldn't have deluded myself into wanting to find you as a host body. I won't do it again. Master, please forgive me this time. Master. Whoa. The little water droplet trembled and turned back into a lustrous ball of water. It chased after Arbor, bouncing and hopping. Arbor rushed towards the snowy peak, and the little water droplet mindlessly followed behind her. Arbor stopped. She stood on a protruding boulder on the snowy peak, allowing the sunlight to completely envelop her. Her small hand tightly gripped a hard rock, and her knuckles turned slightly white. She couldn't control her body from trembling slightly. Chapter 330. Master, I'm sorry, Master. The water ball circled around Arbor, but it didn't dare to get close. Arbor did not expect her emotional breakdown to come so quickly. She had always thought that she had buried her wounds perfectly, and even thought that she had completely forgotten the past. But from the looks of it now, there were some things that couldn't be forgotten even if you deliberately chose to. If the rotten flesh around the wound was not removed, it would never heal. Xiaomu took a deep breath and looked up at the faint sunlight spilling down. When he turned his head, Arbor looked at the wailing ball of water in surprise. This little thing was originally made of water. When it cried, 2 streams of tears shot out from the ball of water and flowed onto the ground with a splash. Arbor quickly took out a bottle and filled it with water. Is this holy water? 8 drops are enough. Why do you need so many? The little water blob took a deep breath and almost suffocated herself to death. However, she quickly stopped crying. Looking at the little master who had just shot her a murderous look, she stammered, Master. Just now, the look in its master's eyes was extremely cold and merciless, causing the ball of water to sink into a terrifying fear. Just now it wasn't towards you. Arbor knew very well that at that moment, she saw the water blob as a crooked snake. The snake's cold face and mocking expression overlapped with the friend from her previous life. In that instant, she lost control of her emotions and her actions were completely out of control. I'm sorry. Arbor looked at the water blob apologetically. She wanted to say something to comfort her, but she was not good at expressing her feelings. In the end, he could only sigh faintly. Let's go back. Master and senior sister should be worried. Master. The little ball of water flew in front of her, sparkling with blue light. It looked like it was begging to be touched and hugged. Junior sister. Su Shanshan and the others followed behind Murong Suan. When they reached the summit of the snowy peak and saw that Arbor was fine, they involuntarily relaxed. Arbor was reaching out his hand when he heard the call and looked up. When he was half an inch away from the ball of water, Arbor's small hand suddenly retracted. He subconsciously clenched his small fist and quickly walked towards his master. The blue light covering the water blob slowly dimmed, and the blob followed behind Miss Chow listlessly. 3 days later, Arbor left the water blob at the Holy Water Sect's mystical treasured land and left the sect with the disciples from the 3 peaks on a crane. The villagers of Xianghe village were rushing out of their houses when they heard the cries of cranes. They hurriedly looked up. More than 30 Holy Water Sect disciples, whose faces could not be seen clearly, were either sitting or standing on the backs of the cranes. Following the waves of cranes' cries, more than 30 Holy Water Sect disciples flew into the distance. Mother, are those immortals? The little girl pointed at the flying crane shadows and asked. That's right. Those immortals have always been protecting us in their own way. The flock of cranes sent them down the mountain all the way to the Mingshui River before returning. Xixia Valley was located at the edge of the western wilderness and bordered Shuang City. They had to pass through the Great Swamp. The Holy Water Sect group planned to travel by water, and would reach the vicinity of the Great Swamp in about 10 days. After calculating the distance, they had to hurry because it might take some time to cross the Great Swamp. Master, there's a boatman up ahead. I'll go ask him. A disciple from the 3 peaks dashed towards the river like a bird released from its cage. That boatman was sitting by the river with his back facing the holy water sect group. The disciple from the 3 Peaks patted his shoulder with a grin. "Uncle, are you running a boat? Send us to." The boatman abruptly turned around. His nose and mouth were all sunken in on his flat face, and only his blackened teeth were exposed. He abruptly opened his mouth and pounced at the disciple from the 3 Peaks, opening his mouth to an unimaginable width. The holy water sect disciples couldn't help but scream. With a whoosh, a jet-black iron arrow pierced through the boatman's throat and exited from the back of his neck. Chapter 331. 3rd Peak's disciple Chun Hanzi broke out in a cold sweat. Just now, she could almost smell the stench of blood spewing out of the zombie's gaping mouth. That flat face was covered in rotting flesh and was abnormally terrifying. The two were less than half a foot away from each other, but Chun Hanzi's heart nearly stopped from fright. In the blink of an eye, the iron arrow pierced through the corpse hag's throat and sent it flying into the river. The water splashed loudly, creating a splash half a person's height. Chun Hanzi was stunned for a moment, and her gaze pierced through the crowd and landed on the last person. Arbor was dressed in a flawless white robe and had a straight and beautiful figure. She held a pitch-black repeating crossbow in her delicate hand and calmly looked over. Little junior sister's decisive arrow had undoubtedly saved her life. Chun Hanzi nodded gratefully at little junior sister from afar. "Hanzi, hurry and come back." Lu Yun shouted at her disciple with a dark face. Chun Hanzi was about to run back when she heard the sound of water splashing from the riverbank. A water-based vine abruptly shot out of the river mud and headed straight for her ankle. Lu Yun's expression changed, and she abruptly flew up. She hastily untied a belt and flung it out, wrapping it around Chun Hanzi's arm with a swish. Chun Hanzi borrowed this force and decisively jumped into the air. However, the water-based vine wrapped around the sole of her left shoe, and Chun Hanzi's body sank down slightly. Fortunately, Lu Yun tightened her belt with one hand and quickly rushed to Chun Hanzi's side. She released a ball of mystic energy and smashed the water-based vine to the ground. She brought Chun Hanzi back several steps before barely managing to stabilize herself. Chun Hanzi looked back and saw one of her shoes being shredded to pieces by the writhing water-based vine at any moment. She immediately shuddered all over. "Are you all right, senior sister Chun?" Doya breathed a sigh of relief and grabbed Chun Hanzi. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine." Chun Hanzi blushed and looked at her master Lu Yun, who had an unsightly expression. In the next instant, a huge wave suddenly surged from the riverbank. Murong Sun extended her hand to block the disciples and sternly ordered retreat. Suddenly, 7 or 8 water-based vines as thick as a person's wrist shot out from the bottom of the water. A few of them formed a group and swept towards the crowd. "What is this? Is it a demonic plant?" The holy water sect disciples all drew their swords to hack at the aquatic vines that swept over. "This is a level 2 corpse-eating vine." Arbor's cold voice sounded. "It's best not to get caught by it. Pay attention to protect your exposed skin. Don't get scratched by it to avoid infection." Although level 2 corpse-eating vines were not like level 3 corpse puppets, which would definitely mutate and become infected when scratched, level 3 corpse-eating vines would not be infected. But to be on the safe side, it was better not to get caught. He should not have any wishful thinking, lest he be unaware of the impending disaster. "Seems that the more you cut, the more there are." Chang Yushi couldn't help but exclaim. After these corpse-eating vines were chopped off, they were still wriggling on the ground. They looked very disgusting. Arbor had already risen into the air. He stroked the tiny goosebumps on his arms and lowered his wrist. His fingers lightly clasped, and 5 iron arrows shot towards the riverbank with a whoosh like shooting stars chasing after the moon. When the iron arrows shot into the river, a strange hissing sound came from the depths of the river. It was like an iron rod scraping against the ground, producing a sharp ear-piercing sound. Afterwards, all the corpse-eating vines that were attacking simultaneously fell limply to the ground, motionless. Chapter 332. The expressions on all the holy water sect disciples' faces were extremely colorful. No one expected that they would encounter this kind of situation the moment they left the Great Snow Mountain. There really wasn't a moment of peace. After Arbor killed the corpse-eating vine's main body, All the corpse-eating vines stopped moving. Chang Yushi hastily took out a match and burned all the corpse-eating vines on the riverbank to a crisp. Murong Sun's face darkened. I'm afraid the water route won't work. Cranes aren't suited for long-distance travel. Also, if something happens in the air, we'll be even more passive. Murong Sun pondered for a moment before saying, for now, we can only go to Five Moon City to exchange for some horses. Lu Yun glanced at her disciples with a dark expression. Have you all forgotten your master's instructions when you're outside? Outside, unlike in the sect, you must maintain vigilance at all times and mustn't be impulsive. Disciple knows her mistake. Chun Hanzi admitted her mistake with a red face and turned to thank Arbor. Thank you, little junior sister. Little junior sister's reaction just now was shockingly fast. This meant that ever since she left the snow mountain, she hadn't relaxed her guard at all and was constantly in a tense state of battle readiness. When they thought of this, all the female disciples were ashamed. They thought that they were much older than little junior sister, but they weren't as steady and decisive as this little girl. The group could only turn back to Five Moon City and head directly to the city lord's estate. These past years, the Holy Water Sect had accepted many missions in Five Moon City, so they could be considered old acquaintances with the city lord of Five Moon City. When the guards brought them to the south side of the city lord's estate, the city lord was personally digging in a small patch of blackened soil. There were 3 or 4 retainers following him with deeply furrowed brows. When the city lord saw Murong Sun's group, he hastily cleaned up the dust on his body and welcomed them with a smile. He cupped his hands from afar and politely said, Nice to meet you, nice to meet you. Your presence brings light to my humble abode. City Lord Wu is too courteous. Murong Sun cupped her fists in greeting and explained her intentions with a smile. Wu Mantian readily agreed and immediately ordered his subordinates to prepare horses. Can the land the city lord dug be planted? Yang Shirong asked with a smile. Wu Mantian sighed and shook his head. Nowadays, the amount of land that can be planted in the city is decreasing, and there aren't many seeds left in the storage. Because many seeds that were planted in the ground could not grow anything at all, and in the end, they all rotted in the ground. We've basically searched all the nearby villages, and there's nothing left to collect. In the past few years, the food supply had been getting less and less. If they continued to use up their food reserves like this, they might not even be able to last a year. At that time, we can only migrate to the large fortifications in the north. Wu Mantian's eyes were filled with yearning. I heard that Northern Moi has established 13 great fortifications, and their iron bastions are impregnable. I just don't know if they will accept outsiders. Murong Sun, Yang Shirong, and Lu Yun's faces darkened slightly. 2 years ago, after the old king of the Chou kingdom was poisoned to death by a favored concubine, his sons fought over the throne and almost killed each other. Currently, the Chou kingdom only existed in name. At least Wu Mantian was taking care of Five Moon City, so it was still alright. If they really had to move the city, it would be a huge movement. Husband. As they spoke, a young woman with a simple face rushed over while crying and running while carrying a 5 or 6-year-old girl. Madam, what happened? Wu Mantian was shocked and hastily walked up to catch the young woman who was staggering over. Husband, hurry and save Chuer. Save her. Chapter 333. Quickly invite the estate doctor here. Wu Mantian couldn't help but panic when he saw his unconscious daughter foaming at the mouth. The estate doctor said Chu-er can't be saved. The young madam cried out with a pained expression. Husband, this concubine heard that several peak masters from Holy Water Sect came to the estate. This person must be the Holy Water Sect's peak master. The young madam hastily knelt in front of Murong Sun with the child in her arms. Please save my daughter, peak master. Save her. Murong Sun was dumbfounded. She was a peak master and a mystic cultivator instructor, but she didn't know anything about the art of medicine, alright? How could she endure being forced to do something beyond her ability like this? Murong Sun hastily stopped the city lord madam from kneeling. Madam, please rise, madam. Murong Sun turned to City Lord Wu and helplessly said, I won't hide it from you too. If you want to seek treatment, it's better to find Celestial Medicine Valley. There's only one person in our Holy Water Sect who knows a bit about medicine, and she's the sect master's personal maidservant. She's still in the Holy Water Sect. The city lord madam fell to the ground like a deflated balloon. The city lord hastily reached out to support her. Madam, madam. The city lord madam hugged her daughter and wailed. My poor daughter. If you keep strangling her like this, she really will die soon. Suddenly, a cold voice rang out amidst the crying. The voice was crisp and clear, like a stream of spring water caressing through a snowy mountain. The city lord and madam looked in the direction of the voice in a daze, only to see a 12 or 13-year-old little girl with black hair and plain clothes looking at them with cold eyes. She was about to mediate the situation when she heard her little disciple angrily rebuke. What's the use of crying? Can crying alone solve the problem? You. Put her down. The city lord madam reflexively let go, but she still dazedly stared at the little girl. Suddenly she felt her leg lighten. It turned out the little girl had carried her daughter to the side and placed her on the edge of the field. Murong Sun was about to speak when her gaze froze. He saw his little disciple skillfully twisting Chu Er's wrist. He first felt her pulse, then opened her eyelids to take a look. Then she took out a small needle bag from her waist and took out several silver needles. She directly inserted a few needles into the patient's body. Her speed was so fast that it almost dazzled these laymen. Eldest senior sister, my disciple knows how to treat patients? Young Shirong was simply stupefied. She turned to look at Murong Sun, whose gaze had frozen, and involuntarily laughed in schadenfreude. No? This is the first time you've heard about it, right? Ha ha ha. Murong Sun stretched out her hand and forcefully pushed the fool's head to the side, shooting her an irritated glare. By this time Arbor had quickly pulled out the needle and turned the girl upside down. With a wah sound, the girl spat out a mouthful of black liquid, and her complexion improved significantly. The mayor and his wife looked in front of them with surprise and joy. They hurriedly ran over and reached out to pick up the little girl. They kept saying to Arbor, "Thank you, little girl. Thank you." Arbor expressionlessly looked at the city lord and his wife. She swallowed heartbreak grass. Heartbreak grass? The city lord and his wife looked at each other in surprise. They had never heard of this medicinal herb's name before. That's heartbreak grass. Arbor casually pointed at the 3 pots placed in the corridor in the distance. The city lord's wife was shocked. It's poisonous? Its poison is concentrated near the root. Even adults can't take it after swallowing it, let alone children. Chapter 334. Chore, you're randomly eating again. The city lord's wife grasped her daughter's hand in exasperation and lightly patted it twice. Mother, I'm hungry. The little girl's face was ghastly pale, and she weakly whined. City Lord Wu was dazed and regretted his past actions. In order to live frugally, City Lord Wu mobilized the entire city and ordered everyone to only eat 1 meal a day. Almost all of the city's citizens passed their days half-starved. As the city lord, he naturally had to set an example and lead the way. His entire family suffered with him. Adults could endure it, but when a child was hungry, she could only randomly grab something to eat. She probably ate the heartbreak grass planted by the roadside raw. The city lord's wife's tears streamed down like rain, and she looked up at City Lord Wu with resentment. Her poison is mostly cured, but to prevent the remaining poison from wreaking havoc in her body, take 1 pill a day for 7 days. Arbor tossed a small jade bottle to the city lord's wife with a wave of her hand. Thank you, godly physician, thank you, godly physician. The city lord and his wife were endlessly grateful and repeatedly thanked her. Arbor shook her head, her stoic face solemn and serious. I'm not some godly physician. I probably only know a little about medicine. Everyone. Murong Sun and Yang Shirong met each other's eyes and were speechless at the same time. This was truly fucked up. She could revive a dying child with just a few random needles, and she only knew a little about medicine. How could people who truly knew a little about medicine endure this? How could Murong Sun and the others know that the little stoic was purely thinking this in her heart? Her innate medical skills had always been a bit strange and unfathomable. If you said she knew medicine, she felt like she had never learned it in her life. If you said she didn't know anything, she could roughly name any poisonous herb or wondrous medicine with a single glance. If she encountered a sudden illness, she could immediately treat the patient. Every time she inserted needles, she felt like she had inserted needles countless times. The strangest thing was that she even ran to the holy water sect to specifically flip through the books and found a few medical and herbal books to check. She found that the various herbs in the herbal book completely overlapped with some of the information in her mind. The only difference was probably the names of the herbs. For example, she only knew the name of the heartbreak grass after reading the herbal book. Before she flipped through the book, the name of another herb with similar characteristics and toxicity popped up in her mind. After flipping through all the medical books, she only felt a sense of déjà vu, as if she had flipped through countless medical and poison books in the past. The holy water sect's medical books were all the most common books circulating on the market, so she couldn't compare more. She could only say that she had a rough idea and suspected that she might have some knowledge of medicine. Ahem, madam. Can I take a look at the medicine in your hand? Young Shirong stared curiously at the jade bottle in the mayor's wife's hand. The city lord's wife hurriedly offered it with both hands. Young Shirong poured out a small round-sized, jet-black pill from the jade bottle. Everyone stared blankly at Arbor, unable to take their eyes off him. Murong Sun was also curious. Disciple, could this be a pill that you made yourself? Arbor glanced at the medicine in Yang Shirong's hand and slowly nodded. She only made some small pills according to the medicinal techniques described in the common medical books. At first, her movements were a bit stiff, but the more she made, the more familiar she felt. It was as if she had made countless pills, powders, and even liquid medicine before. Murong Sun and the others stared at her dumbfoundedly for a long time. It was not until the neighing of horses that everyone was interrupted from their daze. Chapter 335. After the three peak masters bid farewell to Wu Mantian and his wife, they led their disciples out of the city lord's estate. Along the way, all of the holy water sect's female disciples were bewildered and did not regain their senses for a long time. Little junior sister's medical skills were astonishing. The acupuncture technique that little junior sister revealed just now was simply an eye-opener. Not only was their little junior sister exceptionally talented in martial arts, but she also seemed to be very knowledgeable in medicine. Little junior sister was such a knowledgeable person in medicine, but she merely said aloofly, "I only know a little bit." All of the senior sisters felt very subtle. Their hearts were struck by this miraculous little junior sister. After silently hurrying for a while, Murong Sun was the first to catch her breath. She turned to look at her little disciple. "Jojo, you know medicine?" "I know a little bit," the little stoic expressionlessly replied and focused on the road in front of her. "You're clearly extremely skilled with your skills. How is that a little bit?" Peak Master Murong roared in her mind before turning around with a grin. "So it's like that. Then why didn't you tell Master?" At this moment he heard Yang Shirong's giggling in the background. Murong Sun inwardly ground her teeth. Master has never asked. Xiaomu suddenly cast a glance behind her, her slender brows creasing slightly. Murong Sun. Disciple, what else can Master say after you answered like that? This little fellow's ability to end a conversation with 3 sentences was truly improving. Arbor abruptly pulled on the reins and turned his horse around to stare at the road they came from. Murong Sun and the others were startled and also urged their horses to turn around, their gazes becoming guarded. "Still not coming out?" Arbor muttered in a clear voice. Gurgle. In the air, a cloud of water mist suddenly condensed together. With a bang, it transformed into a small ball of water. Its whole body was emitting a blue light, flickering from time to time. "Lady Holy Water!" Chang Yushi and the others cried out in surprise. The 3 peak masters' expressions changed, and they worked together to set up a soundproof barrier, enclosing Lady Holy Water within it. Don't joke around. If the sacred water was exposed in front of people, then it wouldn't just be a matter of Sikong planet fighting over it. Even the 6 prefectures and 3 prefectures would join the fray. Goody. The water blob flashed to Arbor's side. The water blob shook a little, and little hands and feet stretched out of the water blob. It turned into an onion-headed baby and looked at its master with a cute face. Arbor was expressionless. "Didn't I tell you to stay in the sect? Master." The little water baby looked at her pitifully, its big blue eyes blinking. It was so adorable that the senior sister's heart softened. Chang Yushi was the first one who couldn't take it anymore. She hurriedly jumped out to speak for Lord Holy Water. Little junior sister, I think Lord Holy Water is pretty good. You should bring it along. Right. Xue Xiao also nodded hastily. Lord Holy Water also gave us each a small bottle of sacred water. It knows its mistake and can change. Little junior sister, please forgive it. Su Shanshan and all the first peak disciples nodded in agreement. The disciples from the other two peaks were all dumbfounded and turned to look at Xue Xiao in unison. Senior sister Xue, what did you say? Lord Holy Water gave you a small bottle of sacred water? How many drops were in a small bottle? What they heard couldn't be true, right? You all want some too? The little stoic interrupted at this moment and took out a large bottle from her storage talisman. Bring your own bottles and pour some for you. It cried a lot last time, so it should work, right? Everyone. Chapter 336. The three peak masters all twitched their mouths at the same time. The senior sisters couldn't describe how traumatized they were right now. He only felt that in front of little junior sister, nothing seemed to be a problem. However, all of them acted in unison and hastily took out bottles of varying sizes from their inner worlds to line up to receive the holy water. Murong Sun helplessly looked at these disciples and reminded them, remember, don't use the holy water to level up during the competition. Even if you lose the competition, you can't use it to avoid being discovered and coveted by people with ulterior motives. Yes, the holy water sect disciples nodded in acknowledgement. Murong Sun then nodded and looked at Arbor. Disciple, quickly put away the holy water and don't rashly show it to others. This item is hard to find even in tens of thousands of years. If it falls into the eyes of people with ulterior motives, they'll definitely fight you to the death. But this is the holy item that the sect worships. Silly disciple, the sect has instructed for the past 100 years that if the holy water wants to leave one day, we should naturally let it leave and not obstruct it. Can be seen that the holy water is free. Now that the holy water has chosen a master and has chosen a disciple of our holy water sect, isn't that great? This item is hard to find even in tens of thousands of years, so hurry and put it away. The little stoic's gaze shifted, and she awkwardly glanced at the water child. The water child suddenly felt that master's glance seemed to contain a bit of disdain. Wah, the water child was so sad. It's soft and slippery, so it's not easy to carry. Master, I can turn into a solid state and not move at all. After saying that, the water child's entire body curled into a small square block of ice and landed in Arbor's hand with a thump. Arbor was speechless. After a while he asked, what other appearance can you turn into? This block of ice could only be thrown into a storage talisman. I can turn into an ice ring. No, it's too conspicuous. She didn't want to cause trouble for no reason. How about this? The block of ice curled up and shrunk several times, turning into a round thumb-sized ice bead. Arbor finally nodded in satisfaction. Master, you can do whatever you want. I won't touch it. The little ice bead's soft and cute voice sounded. Arbor's heart skipped a beat. He raised his hand and gently stroked the ice bead. What are you talking about? I'll put you in my waist pocket. You can move if you want, but don't come out to meet people. Being outside the sect was different from being in the sect. She knew very well how sinister people could be. It was best to be careful. Once the little tree woke up, she could put it back on Paradise Planet so that she wouldn't have to worry about it. Yes, Master is the best. Diandian loves Master the most. As a result, the Holy Water Sect's party hurried on their journey without rest. After more than 20 days, they arrived at the adventurer base near the Great Swamp. Master, I've confirmed it. This is the only way to the west. If you want to go to Xixia Valley, you must pass through this great desolate swamp, whether by water, land, or air. Hidden Flower followed behind his master and wandered around this area. Why isn't he here yet? Emolian frowned. He had arrived at this base 3 days in advance, but he still hadn't seen the little fellow. Calculating the time, she should be here in the next few days. Just as he was speaking, a 17 or 18-year-old girl suddenly stumbled out of the crowd and pounced on Emolian. Hidden Flower's brows twitched, and he couldn't resist facepalming. Again. After entering this base, He couldn't even tell how many girls had rushed to pounce on his master. Was it really that fun to be mercilessly kicked out like this and not even touch the corner of his master's clothes? Chapter 337. Lord Mo raised his phoenix eyes slightly, and his expression was gentle. He only reached out and lightly brushed his sleeves before walking forward as if he hadn't seen anything. It was as if it wasn't a beautiful girl who wanted to throw herself into his arms, but a blind little bird that had flown over and been unceremoniously flicked away by him. Hidden Flower, who was following behind his master, chuckled silently in his heart before following her like a lackey. He would just pretend that he didn't see his master occasionally going crazy or something. He was a considerate and loyal little guard, so he wouldn't say things like, "Master, you're really crazy." Emolienne hadn't taken 2 steps when she suddenly stopped. She abruptly turned around and narrowed her phoenix eyes as she swept her gaze over the passers-by behind her. When the passers-by's gazes landed on him, they all subconsciously paused in their steps, and their gazes lingered on him for a moment. Under a moon-white robe was a tall and slender youth. His posture was tall and straight, and his features were clear and elegant. He was as elegant and unrestrained as colored glass, and he was like a piece of sparkling and translucent jade that had fallen from a snowy peak. He was indescribably beautiful. Hidden Flower was slightly taken aback. He took 2 steps forward and softly called out, "Master." Emolienne retracted her gaze and muttered to herself, "I have a strange feeling," as if the little fellow had already come to his side. "Go to the nearby inns and ask." "Yes." Hidden Flower immediately accepted the order and led a small group of black-clothed youths to inspect the inns from door to door. When Hidden Flower led the group of youths past a bustling pavilion with a tall and wide entrance that had adventurers coming and going, he only raised his head to glance at the large gold-gilded black signboard before calmly walking past the door. He didn't even bring anyone in to take a look. Inside Morning Sunlight Pavilion, Arbor expressionlessly stood in front of the counter and flipped through a box of blank talisman papers provided by the shopkeeper. "This is all of the blank talisman papers in this pavilion." The old shopkeeper was over 50 years old. His face was simple and amiable, and there was a faint smile on his face from beginning to end. Arbor nodded and closed the box of blank talismans. How much food? She had been cultivating in seclusion in the sect for many years, so she had long been unaware of the prices in the outside world. That was why she asked. The old shopkeeper was stunned, and before he could speak, he heard a sharp laughter mixed with sarcasm coming from behind him. "Haha, what a country bumpkin, exchanging food for food. Are you kidding me? Get out of the way." Arbor turned his head slightly and saw a young girl with an oval face and vertical eyebrows. She was walking forward with her chin held high. The young girl looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. She was wearing a blue brocade gown with a butterfly pattern, a red muslin cover, and a lake green pleated skirt. As she walked, the hem of her skirt fluttered in the wind. "Shopkeeper, I'm here to pick up the defensive profound clothes that I ordered yesterday." The girl raised her chin high, as if her chin would fall off if she didn't. When the girl approached, she deliberately bumped into Arbor with her shoulder. How could Arbor let her have her way? He leaned to the side to avoid her, but his brows were slightly furrowed, and a trace of displeasure flashed through his eyes. He thought to himself, what an arrogant girl. "Miss Ning, the things are ready." The shopkeeper smiled at her without much change in his expression. He took out a long brocade box from the bottom of the cabinet and placed it in front of the girl. He extended his hand and politely said, "According to the rules, please show me your treasure talisman." Chapter 338. The young girl raised her lips and cast a haughty sidelong glance at Arbor. She pinched a red diamond-shaped jade talisman between her fingers and handed it to the shopkeeper. After the shopkeeper received it, he carefully appraised it and touched the mark engraved on the back of the jade talisman before respectfully returning it to the young girl. "Hello, this is a red jade treasure talisman. It requires 1,000 points to exchange for this defensive mystic garment. Would you like to deduct the points to exchange now?" "Exchange." The young girl smiled complacently and faintly turned her head to sweep Arbor a glance. She couldn't help but get angry with this glance. She originally thought that the little girl next to her would be so ashamed that she wouldn't be able to lift her head after being ridiculed by her. Who would have expected that she would still see a wooden face? The little girl's gaze curiously landed on the red jade treasure talisman, and her gaze wandered back and forth between the long brocade box and the red jade treasure talisman. Who allowed you to casually look at other people's things? Country bumpkin. Scram. The young girl furiously pushed Arbor. A disapproving voice came from the side. Junior sister, what are you doing? How can you be so rude? Ning Bifan stomped her feet and looked at the tall and handsome man next to her with displeasure. Senior brother, why are you speaking up for the country bumpkin? The little stoic directly ignored the senior brother and sister pair, and looked curiously at Morning Sunlight Pavilion's shopkeeper. Do you want to exchange the items here? The shopkeeper nodded with a smile. That's right, little miss. Morning Sunlight Pavilion doesn't directly sell items to individuals. The sale will only be conducted as a public auction. A large-scale auction will be held at the beginning of every month. If the little miss is interested, you can come take a look then. Where did that red jade treasure talisman and those points come from? Our dear Chow Mu continued to ask. Country bumpkin. Ning Bifan's arm was pulled by her senior brother, but she still couldn't resist rebuking Miss Chow. Shopkeeper, why are you being so long-winded with her? Hurry and help me wrap things up properly. This girl looks like a country bumpkin from some remote village. What's there to chat about? Arbor suddenly turned his head and frowned at the girl. He expressionlessly said, You're very annoying. If you interrupt again, I'll have you die. The crowd that was originally watching the show with relish suddenly had black lines appear on their faces. As soon as this little girl walked into Morning Sunlight Pavilion, she had already attracted everyone's attention. There was no other reason than that she was too elegant and refined, even more so than a snowman. Ning Bifan was also angry because her senior martial brother couldn't take his eyes off the little girl as soon as he entered Morning Sunlight Pavilion. Now that he heard the little stoic's words, he couldn't help but fly into a rage. Why don't you try? Hit me. Come and hit me. Slap. The little stoic's hand was as fast as lightning, and her palm struck Ning Bifan's small oval face. The shopkeeper couldn't resist twitching his mouth. He was close, so he naturally could see how fast the little stoic attacked. Almost as soon as that girl finished her provocative words, the little stoic slapped her across the face. He was really asking for it. Blood trickled from the corner of Ning Bifan's mouth from the slap. She covered her face with one hand and abruptly straightened her body. Her eyes were red as she stared incredulously at the stoic face. She shrieked sternly, You dare to hit me? The little stoic was baffled. She lowered her head to look at her small hand, then raised her head to look at Ning Bifan, who was livid. Weren't you the one who asked me to hit you? Everyone. Ah! Ning Bifan clenched her fists as if she had gone mad and pounced at Miss Chow with mystic energy. Chapter 339. There was a loud rumble. Ning Bifan's attack was repelled by Miss Chow, and sent her flying out along with the window frame. Miss Ning clung onto half of the wooden window frame, and was smashed out along with half of the shattered wall. She sprawled on the ground. The people on the street thought they saw a young lady flying out along with the window frame. The passers-by hastily dodged in all directions and stared dumbfoundedly at the young lady crashing onto the ground with a bang. She was so dizzy that she fell flat on her face, and her entire face was bleeding. Soon after, some broken pieces of the wall and wooden window fell onto her body and head with a pitter-patter, making her look rather disheveled. Junior sister. The tall man bent over and jumped out of the window hole. He hastily ran to his junior sister and reached out to help her up. Ning Bifan clung to her senior brother with a wah and collapsed into the man's arms while crying. Morning Sunlight Pavilion's shopkeeper's head was filled with black lines, and he hastily walked out of the room. Looking at the disheveled Miss Ning, he hastily said that the wall and window were smashed. You have to compensate for it. The passers-by. Shopkeeper. Do you think you're being honest by doing this? The young lady fell so hard that her face looked like a pig's head. Yet you still chased after her to ask for compensation. Ning Bifan only felt that she had never been so dark in her 18 years of life. She was bawling her eyes out as she raised her head and roared at the shopkeeper. Did I smash it? Are you sick in the head? Every injustice has its perpetrator and every debt its debtor. Go find her for compensation. She pointed at our dear Chow Mu, who had followed them out. The little stoic only felt that this young lady was a bit baffling, so she walked to the shopkeeper's side and said, "You didn't finish speaking just now." The shopkeeper glanced speechlessly at the little fellow and explained patiently, "The treasure-gathering talisman is our Morning Sunlight Pavilion's unique permit exchange certificate. In the past, 10,000 gold taels could exchange for a red jade treasure-gathering talisman. 100,000 gold taels could exchange for a blue jade treasure-gathering talisman, and 1,000,000 gold taels could exchange for a black jade treasure-gathering talisman. You can obtain a certain amount of points every time you come to buy something." Oh. The little fellow decisively ended the conversation. The corner of the old shopkeeper's mouth twitched, and he couldn't help but continue, "Nowadays we don't sell treasure talismans anymore, unless you can bring out a good auction item." The little stoic didn't say anything and just looked at the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper could tell that the little stoic in front of him was still waiting for him to continue explaining, so he could only speechlessly continue. The 500 blank talismans you took a fancy to just now require 3,000 points to exchange." TSK, Ning Baifan couldn't help but sneer. 3,000 points? Do you even have it, country bumpkin? She had accumulated 1,000 points over the past 6 years. She didn't believe that the country bumpkin in front of her had 3,000 points. "You don't either." The little stoic turned to glance at Ning Baifan, her expression saying, "Why bother making things difficult for a poor person?" Even the shopkeeper couldn't help but laugh out loud. You're simply." Ning Baifan trembled with anger. "All right, junior sister, stop messing around." The man frowned impatiently. "Let's take the things and leave. Master is still waiting for us at the inn." "No, you have to pay the compensation first," the old shopkeeper said sullenly. Ning Baifan stomped her feet in anger and casually threw a bag of grain to the old shopkeeper. "Is it enough?" The old shopkeeper shook his head. Ning Baifan was furious and threw out another bag. She was so angry that her heart ached. "So many beans, it's enough for you to hire 2 people to repair 10 walls." The shopkeeper finally stopped talking. Ning Baifan turned her head and pointed at Arbor. Chapter 340. Little Village Girl. Don't be complacent. I'm the daughter of Wanxiang Sex Master, Ning Guilai Ning Baifan. If you have the guts, tell me your name. I'll settle this with you later. Oh. Arbor nods, not responding at all. This attitude is simply enough to anger a dead person back to life. Little Village Girl. Ning Baifan's head is about to explode, and she wants to curse. You're so annoying. I don't even know you, so why are you being so long-winded with me all day? Arbor suddenly flashes, the silver-white blade in her hand flashes, and a line of snow slashes towards Ning Baifan's neck. Junior sister. The man behind her sees everything clearly. If that dagger really slashes Ning Baifan's neck, it will really take her life. The man is so frightened that he breaks out in cold sweat. He hastily reaches out and forcefully pulls his junior sister behind him. In a hurry, he circulates a wisp of mystic energy and grabs Arbor's wrist with his bare hand. Seeing that the 5 fingers are about to touch her wrist, Arbor's slender wrist slightly rotates, and the dagger in her left hand instantly swaps. The dagger in her left hand shoots out like lightning. Ah! Ning Baifan turns pale with fright, falling on her butt on the ground. Taking a closer look, the dagger that flew out of her hand is now stuck horizontally in Ning Baifan's chest. But because Ning Baifan is wearing a defensive mystic artifact, the dagger only pierces 2 centimeters and can't go any further, so only a faint trace of blood can be seen on her chest. Ning Baifan is still in a state of shock, her whole body slightly trembling. The man turns his head to glance at her, then frowns at Arbor. Little miss, you're too ruthless. My junior sister only has a few words with you, why do you have to take her life? What sect do you belong to? Senior brother, don't talk too much with her. This witch must be from some demonic sect. Kill her. Ning Baifan sits on the ground, shouting angrily with bloodshot eyes. Arbor expressionlessly glances at her. She swipes the air, and her fingers faintly pull out a pitch-black ferrule. You also want to die? Miss, you might not be overconfident. A trace of anger appeared on the man's face. Previously, He had seen this little girl's cold appearance and couldn't help but take a few more glances at her. He didn't expect that once he really came into contact with her, he would be angered half to death by her cold temperament. I'm a level 10 mystic cultivator. Even if I don't summon my mystic beast, a mere level 8 mystic cultivator like you might not be my match. The man's words made the crowd gasp. A level 8 mystic cultivator? This little girl looked to be around 12 or 13 years old, but she had already broken through to become a level 8 mystic cultivator? No wonder he was so aloof and cold. I also don't want to bully the weak. Apologize to my junior sister and I'll let you go. How about it? The man said indifferently. Senior brother. Ning Bifan angrily pounded the ground and roared. I don't want her apology, and I don't want to let her off. Kill this demoness for me. Kill her. Shut up. The man growled. The little stoic lifted her eyelids slightly, and the ferrule in her hand shook lightly. A load of nonsense. We'll know once we fight. Blabbering nonsense all day long. Blabbering my ass, let's fight. It was rare for Master to say that they would stay for a day at this adventurer base so they could split up and move freely. She only came out to buy a blank talisman, so how did she encounter this pair of oddballs? The little stoic thought. If I take them down, I won't have so much to say. On the other side. Master. Huifeng's ghostly figure appeared next to Mo Lian. This subordinate received news that someone is causing trouble in front of Morning Sunlight Pavilion. Mo Lian raised her brows. Go take a look. Chapter 341. When the two arrived at Morning Sunlight Pavilion's entrance, they happened to see a slender and petite plain-colored figure gracefully land on the ground and take a few light steps forward. Lord Mo abruptly stopped in his tracks, and his gaze fixed on that small figure. You lost. Who was the one who was overly confident? He heard the little girl coldly say a few words, as cold and emotionless as before. Although he didn't see her small face, he could already imagine that the little fellow's face was definitely paralyzed and expressionless when she said this. Cough. Miss Ning's senior brother coughed out a mouthful of blood. He clutched his chest and looked at Arbor in disbelief. The battle between the two just now happened too quickly. Not to mention the normal people watching, even he himself was still in a stupefied state. He didn't understand why a level 10 Mystic Cultivator's Mystic Chi attack would actually be repelled by a level 8 Mystic Cultivator. Defensive Mystic Weapon. The little girl definitely had a defensive Mystic Weapon on her. Miss Ning's senior brother's gaze gradually changed. He clenched his right fist and struggled to get up. He roared with a face full of anger. Come out. Suddenly, a giant python covered in black scales abruptly appeared in front of Qiao Mu. It flicked out its scarlet forked tongue with a hiss, and its pair of triangular eyes gloomily cast a sidelong glance at Miss Qiao. In front of Morning Sunlight Pavilion's entrance, the originally spectating crowd all jumped in fright and hastily retreated. Fuck, this snake coiled up into 2 layers and was half a person's height. The little girl was completely tiny in front of it. Arbor subconsciously reached out to stroke the tiny particles that had appeared on his arm. Even though he kept warning himself in his heart, don't be afraid, he still couldn't resist the dense chill in the depths of his heart, and his footsteps retreated slightly. Ha 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 ha. Bitch, I'll teach you a lesson. Python, eat her. Eat her. Ning Bifan, who had finally gotten up from the ground with great difficulty, shouted agitatedly with clenched fists. Hiss! The python opened its huge mouth, and several dozen small snakes scuttled out. All the nerves in Qiao Mu's body practically tensed up the instant her gaze landed on those crooked small snakes. All the hair on her body stood on end as she stared blankly at those things. Miss Qiao subconsciously covered herself with an eggshell. He couldn't care less about how funny the eggshell looked in front of others. She didn't want that. Don't let these disgusting things touch me. When the little snakes were about to touch Arbor's shield, the little girl felt like her head was about to explode. His hands were covered in a layer of profound light, and he was about to use his profound energy to quickly kill the little snake that was pouncing in front of him. In the blink of an eye, a white shadow suddenly landed beside him, and a familiar scent as thin as silk followed. The purple flames landed accurately on the dozens of small snakes. Qiao Mu was dumbfounded. Before she could raise her head, She felt her body suddenly become light. Her feet left the ground for a distance, and her entire body was lifted high up in the air. Bastard! She had already grown taller, so why was she still being hugged the moment she came up? The little girl turned her head and met the youth's smiling phoenix eyes. The two people's gazes were glued together and didn't pull away for a long time. The noisy sea of people around them, the rustling branches and trees, the gentle breeze and all kinds of things, such as still sand paintings, all disappeared the moment they landed. At this moment, it was as if there was only each other left in the two's eyes. The youth was still that gentle and elegant youth with flowing phoenix eyes, while the little girl was still that expressionless little stoic who was as cold as ice. Just like in the past. Chapter 342. Bao Bao missed me. The Crown Prince chuckled softly as he gazed at the black vortex swirling in the little girl's eyes. When such a voice fell into the ears of those who heard it, they all felt a little numb. Arbor didn't know what was wrong with her, but she felt like her heart was pounding nonstop like a drum. Her small face seemed to be a bit hot, and a slender and elegant figure was reflected in the depths of her pitch-black eyes. Shameless guy. She wasn't missing him. Our dear Xiao Mu reached out to push away his handsome face that was inches away from her, and harumphed with a wooden expression. When she looked down, she discovered that the dozens of little snakes that had scuttled over had long been burned to ashes by the small flames at some point in time. The remaining small flame on the ground emitted a faint purple glow. The Crown Prince actually used a purple flame when he made his move. The little fellow stared at the embers carefully. She remembered very clearly that the flames the Crown Prince controlled 4 years ago were red. Suddenly, someone grabbed her small chin and lifted it slightly. A pair of dark eyes helplessly met Prince Mo's half-smiling gaze. The little fellow dryly asked, "What are you doing? What, feeling guilty? Jojo doesn't dare to look at me? What is this Bao Bao feeling guilty about? What did this Bao Bao do that I need to feel guilty about?" Looking at his refreshing expression, our dear Xiao Mu wanted to pounce on him and bite him hard. This Crown Prince who appeared as gentle as jade was probably the only one who knew how dark his heart was. "Bite here." A certain person good-naturedly turned his handsome face and pointed at his left cheek. "Bite it better." Huifeng silently stood behind his master, but 1,000 curses were already running through his heart. "Master, where's your moral integrity?" He felt that his master's serious demeanor had completely changed the moment he saw Miss Chow. Although Arbor's small face was stoic, the corners of her mouth couldn't help but twitch. The Crown Prince looked at her and pinched her slightly cracked little face. He chuckled softly. "Bao Bao, whether you missed me or not, in short, I missed you a lot. I miss Bao Bao. Miss Bao Bao a lot. Arbor felt like her stoic face was about to burn up, and a red mist must have already flown over her cheeks. When the young man said this in a soft voice, his phoenix eyes moved slightly and a smile appeared on his face. Who would be able to resist him like this? The little stoic blinked and reflexively reached out to stroke her slightly flushed small face. She replied seriously, "Oh." Crown Prince was speechless. Bao Bao successfully killed the conversation once again. Huifeng's heart was about to cramp from laughing. He pitied their master for having such a stoic face of few words. It's hard to say. The Crown Prince helplessly glanced at the little stoic before abruptly shooting a glance at the crowd. He sneered, "Want to slip away?" The man, who was about to withdraw and leave, trembled slightly as he held his junior sister's hand. His entire body couldn't help but tremble. He didn't even dare to recall that large python in order to attract the youth's attention. He planned to quietly leave with his junior sister like this. He planned to quietly recall the profound beast once they were far away. She had tolerated and given in, but why was she still unwilling to let him go? "This stinking bug of yours scared my baby. Do you think you can just walk away like that?" The Crown Prince raised his slender fingers. 5 purple flames danced back and forth between his lustrous fingers, as mischievous as fairies. "I wasn't scared." Our dear Xiao Mu immediately retorted. "Don't try to be brave in front of me." The Crown Prince lowered his head to glance at the little girl, a smile flickering in his eyes. "See, just destroy it." "No, don't. I beg you, don't." The man abruptly turned around, his eyes shrinking in fright. Chapter 343. Generally speaking, each mystic cultivator could only contract with one mystic beast in their lifetime. If the mystic beast died, not only would it bite back at its master and cause serious injuries, it also meant that the mystic cultivator would never be able to have another mystic beast for the rest of his life. A great mystic cultivator who lost his mystic beast and suffered serious injuries from the backlash, his future was bound to be bleak. Moreover, it could be said that he was practically a cripple. Ning Baifan's senior brother was truly scared at this time. His frightened gaze followed the movement of the youth's raised finger as he watched the youth throw out several wisps of purple flames. After the mystic beast python was enveloped by the wisps of purple flames, it instantly lost the strength to resist and writhed on the ground. The snake's tail heavily smashed onto the ground, scaring the onlookers into screaming and fleeing in all directions, afraid that they would be smashed into minced meat by the snake's tail. Ning Baifan stared blankly at Prince Mo. She actually stood there with an infatuated gaze and a stupefied expression. She even turned a blind eye to her senior brother vomiting blood on the ground in pain. At this time, there was only that handsome youth who acted ruthlessly like a celestial being in her eyes. That tyrannical youth who shot out several wisps of purple flames with a snap of his fingers and roasted the python until it rolled all over the ground. The youth was tall and slender, as clear as a jade tree. Ning Baifan's gaze was completely snatched away by the youth, and she turned a deaf ear to her senior brother's blood-curdling screams at her feet. A young girl's maiden heart pounded non-stop, until, gouge out her eyes. A cold and distant voice came from the youth's mouth. The white-clothed youth's cold gaze on her made her entire body tremble. This was the first time he looked at her, and also the last time. A black-clothed youth in his 20s suddenly appeared beside Ning Baifan and unhesitatingly gouged out her eyes with the long sword in his hand. Ah! Ning Baifan screamed. Baifan! A mystic energy suddenly shot out from the side and fiercely collided with the long sword in the black-clothed youth's hand. With a crisp ding sound, the youth knitted his brows. The long sword in his hand was slightly deflected and missed Ning Baifan's temples, cutting off a clump of her long fluttering hair. However, the mystic energy that exploded from the sword had already pierced Ning Baifan's eyes. Ah! Eyes, my eyes! Ning Baifan screamed. She held her eyes with both hands, blood seeping out from between her fingers. Baifan! A suction force caused her entire body to fly out involuntarily, and she suddenly fell beside an old man. Grandpa Chow. Wah! Grandpa Chow, my eyes hurt. Ning Baifan was trembling all over because of fear. Go! The old man cast a venomous glance at the crown prince. He grabbed Ning Baifan's shoulder, lifted her up and fled. Obliterate! The crown prince coldly ordered. As soon as he finished speaking, 7 or 8 black-clothed youths quickly scuttled out from both sides, closely following the fleeing old man and Ning Baifan. At this time the surroundings were already silent. The onlookers had all shrunk into a corner and were peeking at them. They didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Who would have thought that things would develop like this? Originally it was just a small quarrel. Our dear Xiao Mu turned her head and looked coldly at the man who was screaming as he was burned by the purple flames. She looked at him expressionlessly, without a shred of sympathy. If she had fallen into the hands of the senior brother and junior sister, with Ning Baifan's personality, would she have let her go? Therefore, don't blame the heavens and accuse others. Where there is a cause, there is an effect. What's more, the python that the man summoned was really too disgusting. Disgusting. Only after all the sticky snake blood on the ground had been burned away by the purple flames did the crown prince put her down. He stroked her little head and said with a smile, "It's fine now, don't be afraid." Chapter 344. I wasn't afraid to begin with. Our dear Xiao Mu clenched her small hands tightly as she thought to herself. Gentle fingers suddenly separated her hands and grasped one of her soft hands, squeezing it in his palm. Arbor raised his head slightly to glance at him. Her small hand reflexively moved in his palm, but he held it even tighter. Greetings to the young master. The old shopkeeper returned to his senses and hastily bowed in greeting. The old man was about to break out in a cold sweat from fright. He didn't expect such a small matter would alarm the young master. Old Han, what happened just now? The crown prince held the little girl's hand and lifted his sleeve slightly, indicating for the old shopkeeper to speak without ceremony. Morning Sunlight Pavilion's old shopkeeper couldn't help but wipe his cold sweat with his sleeve. He looked at the expressionless little girl next to the crown prince with an embarrassed smile and howled inwardly. "Oh, great aunt! You should have said earlier that you were acquainted with our young master and quickly took away that box of blank talismans. Then everything would have been fine." Since the young master asked, how could Han Chong dare to conceal anything? He hastily recounted everything that happened in detail. When he mentioned that box of blank talismans, he stammered awkwardly. This old servant didn't know that this little miss was acquainted with young master. Emolienne lowered her head to glance at the little stoic. When she saw the little stoic blinking her clear eyes at her, she couldn't help but laugh. "What is it? This Morning Sunlight Pavilion is yours?" The little stoic was curious. In her previous life, she had heard of Morning Sunlight Pavilion's resounding reputation, but she had never set foot inside due to her poor and pitiful circumstances, so she naturally didn't know the pavilion's rules. If the crown prince could open this Morning Sunlight Pavilion in this kind of small adventurer base in a remote corner, it could be seen that other large cities also couldn't do without this auction house. "That's right." The crown prince nodded and squeezed the little stoic's small hand with a smile. "Come, let's talk inside." Seeing the large hole by the door and window, the crown prince creased his brows slightly. "Did you compensate?" Old Han wiped the waterfall of sweat on his forehead and nodded vigorously. Yes. Just 2 bags of beans." The little fellow at the side curled his little mouth, obviously looking down on these 2 bags of beans. "How do you do things?" Hidden Flower, who had heard the news, winked at Old Han. 2 bags of beans is so little. Is it enough compensation? Hurry up and send more people over to ask for more compensation. Han Chong was dumbfounded. He snuck a glance at the crown prince's displeased expression and hurriedly nodded in agreement. He led his men and hurried to the inn where Wan Xiang sect was staying. "You don't know how to do things." Hidden Flower had just approached with a smile when the crown prince waved his hand in disdain. "Follow Old Han and have a look." "Oh, Jojo, I've saved a few thousand blank talismans for you. Let's go back later and I'll get it for you." The crown prince held the young lady's hand and walked into Morning Sunlight Pavilion. "Master said that we'll gather at noon. Don't pay attention to her. It's not like we're short on time." Someone continued to coax and instigate. "I've saved up about 5,000 blank talismans. They're all for you." The little stoic's eyes abruptly brightened. "All right then, let's quickly retrieve and return. What's the hurry? We haven't seen each other for so long. We should at least have a reunion dinner before leaving together." It was a reunion dinner again. The little stoic raised her head to glance at him. "Why are you here?" "To see my Jojo." When the crown prince said this, he lowered his head to look at her with a grin, a wisp of gentleness gently rippling in his phoenix eyes. The little stoic's heart inexplicably skipped a beat. She only felt that the youth in front of her had picturesque features that even a myriad of mountains and rivers couldn't compare to. Chapter 345. What a detestable evildoer. Arbor turned her head and was about to take small steps forward. The crown prince suddenly grabbed the little girl's hand tightly. Our dear Xiao Mu was caught off guard and threw herself into his arms. "This bastard." Arbor raised her hand to rub her nose and raised her head. Unexpectedly, the crown prince had just lowered his head, so he naturally planted a gentle kiss on her bright and clean forehead. It was soft and limp, as if a few ants were quietly crawling in her heart. "A return gift. I almost forgot." The youth squeezed her small jade hand and said with a smile. Arbor's entire body froze. A trace of confusion appeared on her slightly raised face. She felt that something wasn't right. Emolienne reached out to cup the little fellow's small face and stared into her large rippling eyes. A satisfied smile appeared on his lips. Look, in that pair of beautiful eyes that were as calm as a dry well and filled with desolation, there was now his reflection. How wonderful! Our dear Xiao Mu came back to her senses and expressionlessly slapped away his slender fingers. She turned around and walked directly to the counter. The crown prince couldn't help but laugh and slowly followed behind her. Old Han stuffed the box of 500 blank talismans back into the secret cabinet. Arbor found the right place and stood in front of the cabinet. She turned her head to look at the crown prince with a bit of expectation on her wooden face. Here, this is for you. He stuffed a half-black, half-white, diamond-shaped jade talisman the size of a longan. There was a small hole in the top and a thin red string holding it together. Treasure talisman? Arbor remembered what the old shopkeeper said. There were a total of 3 types of treasure talismans: red jade, blue jade, and black jade. Then what was this half-black, half-white one? A key. Emolien took a few steps forward and held the little girl's small hand. He led her into a small room and pulled her to a row of cabinets with carved jade ornaments. These ornaments were all carved with all kinds of small, circular, diamond-shaped, and square holes. Arbor was intelligent and immediately understood. He placed the diamond-shaped jade talisman on one of the vases, and a small secret door suddenly opened on one side of the wall. All of Morning Sunlight Pavilion's private vaults can be opened with this key. Seeing the little fellow suddenly raise her head to look at him, he couldn't help but laugh and raise his hand to stroke her head. If you don't want to look for it, it's fine to have the shopkeeper retrieve it. There were 3 more doors after that, each of which could be opened with the diamond-shaped jade talisman in Arbor's hand. Finally, they entered a warehouse. Arbor found 500 blank talismans on a long table. Only then did he realize that the shopkeeper had already transferred the talismans into the storehouse. But that was also true. Most people in their line of work were very cautious. She guessed that when she and Miss Ning were arguing, the old shopkeeper had already quietly ordered his subordinates to move the items back. Look at how anxious you are about these 500 blank talismans, the crown prince chuckled. Let's go. I'll take you home to get 5,000 talismans. Arbor silently returned the jade talisman tied by the red string to him. The crown prince shook his head. I'll give it to you. In the future, when Morning Sunlight Pavilion's people see this thing, it'll be like seeing me. There definitely won't be any misunderstandings like before. The little girl's eyes widened slightly. She couldn't help but snort. If I take a little today and a little tomorrow, I'll soon empty your Morning Sunlight Pavilion. The crown prince laughed loudly and reached out to pick up the little girl. He tapped her little forehead with his finger. Naughty, you think I only have this little private property? Chapter 346. Our dear Xiao Mu stared blankly at him. Just how rich was this guy? From his tone, it seemed like he didn't care about all of Morning Sunlight Pavilion's assets. That's right. He was the most famous genius crown prince of Northern Mo, and the person all of Northern Mo looked up to. Darling Xiao Mu lowered her head and unconsciously poked her fingers together before silently stuffing the jade talisman with the red string into her waist pouch. The crown prince chuckled. Although he couldn't see the expression on the little fellow's stoic face, he could feel the happiness in her heart. Oh, it seemed like he had to get Hidden Flower to sort out an inventory of his assets. She didn't expect that the crown prince would own a comfortable 2-story pavilion residence in this kind of small adventurer's residence in the wilderness of the Great Western Territory. This person really knew how to enjoy life. Darling, wait here for a while and play with these blank talismans first. The crown prince carried her to the bedroom on the 2nd floor and stuffed a large box of blank talismans into her hands. Then, he left her in the room and went out by himself. Our dear Xiao Mu's mouth twitched. It wasn't like she was counting banknotes. She didn't have the hobby of counting talismans. But so many blank talismans really make this darling's heart feel very comfortable. Miss Xiao flipped through the box of blank talismans and started counting silently in her heart. When she counted to 2,000, there was still a thick stack at the bottom. Our dear Xiao Mu speechlessly put down the talismans in her hand. What was going on? She was actually so bored that she was counting talismans. In fact, while she was in seclusion in the mystical treasured land, the golden talisman jade tome had already flipped to the 3rd jade slip. The contents of the 3rd jade slip started from intermediate level talismans. Thus, she had already learned how to inscribe intermediate level talismans 2 to 3 years ago. She just didn't have any extra blank talismans to practice with. Thus, when she had free time, she would just practice on ordinary paper. Now that she had so many blank talismans, the little girl was overjoyed. In addition, the 3rd jade slip also instructed her to look for something called ebony. She reckoned that she might be able to inscribe intermediate-level talismans on ebony in the future. If ebony was easy to find, she wouldn't have to worry about blank talismans in the future. When the Crown Prince came in, his gaze fell on young Arbor, who was kneeling in front of the low table beside the bed. The little girl was holding a golden beaded talisman brush and drawing a talisman with concentration, and her expression was calm and indifferent. Mid-level talisman blue summoning talisman has been completed. Randomly summons a type of natural animal or plant. Effect, 6 days. The level of the summoning must not exceed the user's profound strength by more than 4 levels. The little girl put down the talisman pen and reached out to pick up the middle-level blue summoning talisman. She frowned and looked at it. She had previously used a low-level yellow talisman to summon a blue wand that could ascend to the sky, disregarding the low-level yellow talisman's own rule of no more than 3 levels of profound strength, and even more so, disregarding the time limit. Therefore, this middle-grade blue talisman was really hard to say. Arbor had tried to summon Newbie ever since he brought her with him, but it seemed that the talisman did not respond. Either the summoning failed or Newbie was messing with it. Jojo. The Crown Prince saw that she had finished drawing the talisman and was still staring blankly for a long time. He couldn't help but call out to her. Arbor turned around to look at him. Holding the blue talisman, he stood up and quickly walked to his side. I have a batch of low-level talismans, but they are useless now. I'll put them all up for auction at Morning Sunlight Pavilion. Do you think you can sell them? Chapter 347. The Crown Prince glanced at her in amusement. How much do you have? 100 blue storage talismans, 80 yellow summoning talismans, 20 blue summoning talismans, and a portion of low-level auxiliary talismans. Will anyone buy this much? The little girl asked with her head tilted. Talismans have always been popular goods. Guanlan City's talisman patrician families don't produce much. Most of the talismans they draw are first satisfied internally, and only when there are more will some trickle out. There are basically not many talismans on the market. The Crown Prince held the little girl's hand and walked downstairs. So what nonsense are you saying? If you take them out to auction you'll find it too little, not too much. So it's like that. Arbor's eyes brightened. Then how much can I exchange for after auctioning these things? I probably don't need food anymore. I want to exchange for some ebony. Do you know what ebony is? Emolien's footsteps paused, and she said with a nod, ebony basically grows in the south. Do you have any requests? Arbor thought for a moment. The wood has to be undamaged, and there aren't many other requests. It needs to be cut into small pieces, about the size of a bamboo tablet. For drawing talismans, the Crown Prince asked with a smile. Arbor nodded vigorously. Ebony isn't that rare, so you don't need to exchange for it with auction items. The Crown Prince squeezed her small hand and said, I'll have someone prepare a batch for you first. As for those auction items, how about I exchange them all for mid-grade magnetite at the beginning of the month? Are all transactions in auction houses using magnetite now? That's right. Emolien nodded with a faint smile. In the past, gold could be used for transactions, but now? Those lousy stones aren't worth anything anymore. When ordinary people traded, they naturally used food as a medium. For mystic cultivators, magnetite transactions are naturally more convenient. Just leave the mid-grade magnetite in Morning Sunlight Pavilion. If I need it, I'll come get it. If not, give it to your subordinates. Mid-grade magnetite was suitable for level 5 to level 8 mystic cultivators. If she completely merged with the small water ball's essence water, she probably wouldn't need mid-grade magnetite anymore. During this journey of more than 20 days, Xiaomu would travel at dawn and rest at night. Whenever she had free time, she would secretly assimilate the essence water and suppress the growth of her cultivation. Once she released this suppression, her cultivation would definitely experience a qualitative leap. But now was not the time. After the two of them reached an agreement, the Crown Prince pulled Xiaomu to the dining room on the first floor and sat down. Only then did Arbor realize that in less than an hour, the Crown Prince had made a table full of dishes by himself. What's wrong? Hurry and eat. Emolien passed the chopsticks to the little fellow and looked at her in amusement. Why was she looking at him with such a strange expression? It was as if he had done something unbelievable. How could it not be strange? Arbor bit his chopsticks and tasted the fish. The Crown Prince was actually a good cook, and the taste was quite good. It was simply too shocking. As the Northern Prince Mo, shouldn't he have been given everything he wanted since he was born? You cooked all of this? He truly was an omnipotent youth. Arbor looked down at her fair hands. She didn't even seem to know how to make soup. In any case, she had Sister Fatty to take care of her in the sect all these years, so she didn't need to worry about food. The little stoic focused on cultivation. How is it? As long as I want to learn, I naturally learn well. Prince Mo lightly patted the little fellow's forehead with a smug expression. Hurry and eat. You're too skinny, so you must nourish yourself. He had learned it for a long time and specially cooked it for the little fellow. It would be best if he raised the little fellow until she was round and smooth. Hugging her would be comfortable. Chapter 348. Arbor's belly was a bit round from eating this meal. She lightly patted her belly and reached out to take a plate of oranges from the Crown Prince. Xiaomu lowered her head and silently ate 2 slices. So sweet. She didn't let go of the plate. Although she was a bit full, she greedily ate 2 more slices. Emolien tidied up everything and came over. He saw the little fellow gnawing on a plate of oranges. Her little appearance was truly adorable. He walked to her side and held her small hand. His heart felt like it was scratched by a kitten's claws. A trace of a smile appeared on his lips. Let's go. We can go out to digest the food. Where are we going? To tell your master that we're going to Xixia Valley together. Arbor, you didn't stay at an inn after arriving at the adventurer base. Where did you go? The Crown Prince squeezed the little fellow's hand in passing. We, young master. The moment the two opened the door and walked out, the old shopkeeper, who had been waiting for a long time, jumped in front of the Crown Prince. You've gotten your debt back? Emolien indifferently glanced at Han Chong. The old shopkeeper nodded like he was pounding garlic. The young master had already sent Sir Hidden Flower to follow them. How could they not get it back? Moreover, after those people from Wanxiang sect discovered that their young Miss Ning Bifan had also died, how could they dare to stay? They quickly scattered like birds and beasts. And be smarter in the future. Don't be so easy to talk to. The Crown Prince instructed before waving his sleeves to let old Han leave. The old shopkeeper wiped the sweat from his forehead. When he left, he couldn't help but smile wryly. Heavens, with the current market, 2 bags of beans aren't even enough to repair a wall. How dark is the young master's heart? No, the little girl's heart is even darker. If the little girl didn't complain, how could the young master send people to ruthlessly get his debt back? That after old Han returned to Morning Sunlight Pavilion, he hurriedly gathered all his subordinates for an emergency meeting and exhorted them to never offend the young master's little girl, because the consequences would be much more serious than offending his young master. That one something Ning something? She's really dead? The little girl lightly tugged on the Crown Prince's hand, asking the youth with her gaze. Of course, Emolien nodded knowingly. To how could he allow this little girl, who was so arrogant to say that she wanted to kill him, to live? Then why did you dig out her eyes? The little fellow tilted her head and asked whatever came to her mind. Because she keeps staring at me. I don't want her to look at me. That's because you're good looking. You can't blame others for staring at you, the little girl said with a serious expression. There was a hint of cuteness in her little stoic face. It was really quite interesting. Huifeng, who was silently following behind them, couldn't help but twitch his mouth when he heard this. He always felt that when the Crown Prince and the little girl were chatting together, the scene was especially strange. Emolien couldn't resist laughing out loud. Between me and Duan Yu, who's prettier? You. The little girl replied without any hesitation before adding, actually, Duan Yu's looks aren't bad either. Huifeng almost cramped up from laughing, and he snuck a glance at the Crown Prince. Sure enough, he saw that his lord's handsome face was smeared with a layer of black. Tita, the little girl, said that Duan Yu was quite good-looking, stabbing the Crown Prince in the heart. Don't worry, he's definitely become ugly now. The Crown Prince held the little girl's hand tightly and stabbed his opponent with all his might. Who? Duan Yu. That's really pitiful. The little girl pursed her lips. Huifeng felt like he couldn't take it anymore. He was about to pass out from laughing. How could these two people's conversation be so strange and hair-raising? At this time, Omni-Faction's faction master Ning Guilai also received news of his beloved daughter Ning Baifen's death. Chapter 349. A beautiful figure stood in the ancestral hall of the sect. Her appearance was almost identical to Ning Baifen's. This woman was Ning Baifen's twin sister, Ning Bihuan. Her eyes were fixed on a faintly pulsating life lantern miniature in front of her, and a cold smile hung at the corner of her mouth. The tiny life lantern miniature recorded everything her younger sister experienced at the last moment of her life. There was no sorrow in Ning Bihuan's eyes, not even the slightest emotion. She only stared somewhat dazedly at the white-clothed youth in the life lantern miniature. He was very strong. She had never seen anyone use those few wisps of purple flames between his fingers before. It was him, the handsome youth that her foolish younger sister couldn't forget even at the moment of her death. In the life lantern miniature, she couldn't see the white-clothed youth's appearance at all, but she could feel his power. He was indeed very strong. Ning Bihuan sneered and turned to look at her father standing to the side. Ning Guilai straightened his back, and the corners of his mouth stiffly drooped slightly. For a moment, he was somewhat unable to accept that his daughter had died so miserably in the desolate land of the Great Western region. "Let me go to battle, father." Ning Bihuan stepped forward and said coldly, "I know father doesn't want to participate in this battle between the 3 sects and 5 factions, so you sent that idiot to make up the numbers. Let second uncle lead the team and represent our sect in battle. But now, the situation is stronger than the person. We can't shrink back anymore. That idiot's dead is dead. But I can't let anyone stand on top of our sect and behave atrociously." "Bihuan, that's your younger sister," Ning Guilai angrily rebuked as he looked furiously at his eldest daughter. His eldest daughter's talent was exceptional, and her cultivation level naturally wasn't something his younger daughter could compare to. Although his eldest daughter wasn't wrong and his younger daughter was indeed a bit stupid, they were both his flesh and blood. How could he not feel heartache for his younger daughter? Indeed, he didn't want to participate in this battle between the 3 sects and 5 factions, which was why he sent his younger daughter with mediocre aptitude to Wuxia Valley. But if he had known earlier that today's matter would happen, how could he have looked on helplessly as his younger daughter went to her death? "Father, please allow me to represent the sect in battle. The sect's glory cannot be tarnished. Only if the flame in the heart isn't extinguished can we face any difficulties in the world. Father, please allow your daughter to go to Wuxia Valley." After Ning Bihuan finished speaking, she reached out and heavily pounded her chest. The old man lowered his eyes dejectedly and finally nodded helplessly. Ning Bihuan got up and strode outside. She raised her arm and shouted, "Let's go." This trip would definitely be very rushed. After all, there were only 40 days left until the competition. On the other side, the Crown Prince held Miss Chow's hand as they arrived at a small farmhouse's courtyard. "Live here?" "Yes, second Marshal Uncle's friend's house. We're just staying for a night to rest and reorganize. We'll set off tomorrow morning." "Jojo, please." Su Shanshan and Shui Zhao's voices came to an abrupt halt as they looked at the young man in white who was holding their junior sister's hand. They all had an impression of this young man. They had met once in Qinghe town. At that time he had held Jojo's hand and shot an arrow that took the life of a level 3 zombie puppet. It had left a deep impression on him. "Senior sisters, Emolian wants to go with us. He also wants to go to Wuxia Valley." Arbor ran past his 2 senior sisters. "I'll go talk to Master." "Greetings, senior sisters," Prince Emo said courteously. Su Shanshan and Shui Zhao didn't dare to be arrogant and hurriedly returned the Crown Prince's greeting. During the celebration banquet for the operation in Qinghe town, the city lord had respectfully addressed him as Your Highness, so he must be of noble birth. Chapter 350. Although the holy water sect transcended the secular world, in reality, no one could escape from the secular world in their lifetime. Looking at this youth, disregarding his noble status, his martial arts skills were quite worthy of respect. Murong Sun and her youngest disciple walked out of the room hand in hand. When her eyes landed on Prince Emo, she was slightly startled. "So your highness has graced us with your presence." Murong Sun cupped her fists with a smile. Emo Lien returned the greeting and said with a smile, "Greetings to Peak Master Murong." The little stoic thought, Master and the Crown Prince know each other. But that's right. The 3 sects and 5 factions competition invitations were all sent to the old great king of Emo Kingdom, so it could be seen that they had some interactions with the royal court. Perhaps there would be other influential officials from other kingdoms attending this competition besides Prince Emo. Murong Sun didn't say anything when the Crown Prince wanted to head to Shisha Valley with the Holy Water sect. However, when she saw the Crown Prince holding her youngest disciple's hand and saying that they were going out for a stroll, she suddenly felt like she had fucked a dog. What was going on? Why did it look like her disciple's son-in-law was visiting? Was this appropriate, huh? Her youngest disciple. She actually silently ran off with the Crown Prince without saying anything. Was this appropriate, huh? Little disciple, come back here. When it was close to evening, all of the Holy Water sect disciples returned to the courtyard. The Crown Prince and the little stoic finally returned unhurriedly. The Crown Prince was also carrying a basket of vegetables. A basket of vegetables in his left hand and a bag of pastries in his right. Murong Sun and the others twitched their mouths oddly. They felt like this scene was a bit strange. Such a handsome young man in white who seemed to be above the common populace was carrying a basket of vegetables in his hand. Cough, cough, cough. How could these vegetables match up to his noble hands? But even so, it still couldn't obscure his jade-like handsomeness in the slightest. The little stoic directed the Crown Prince to put down the vegetables and looked up at him, hinting for him to explain with her eyes. The Crown Prince chuckled involuntarily and patted the little fellow's head. He then said, "We met a strange uncle on the way and begged everyone to exchange magnetite." Jojo pitied him, so he used a mid-grade magnetite to exchange for some vegetables and a bag of seeds. Arbor nodded and tugged at his sleeve. The Crown Prince said, "Oh, that's right. We also brought some snacks for the senior sisters." The group of senior and junior sisters from the Holy Water sect cheered and surrounded the table, talking all at once. As expected of our blood-related junior sister. She thinks of senior sister wherever she goes. Yang Shirong snatched a piece of dessert. "Hey, there's still a dessert shop in the adventurer's base?" "Yes, exchanged with magnetite. 2 pieces of low-grade magnetite for a packet of pastries." The Crown Prince nodded. Xiao Mu nodded. "It's very cheap." The group of senior and junior sisters who were eating almost choked on their own saliva. This pair of prodigal children. You actually used 2 pieces of low-grade magnetite to exchange for snacks. Do you know that you will be struck by lightning for being so extravagant? Junior sister Yang, your friend said that he was going to prepare the meal. How is the preparation going? Murong Sun coughed lightly and said, "It's getting late. He started preparing in the afternoon until now. Let's eat early and rest early. We still have to hurry on with our journey tomorrow morning." "I'll go take a look." Peak Master Yang had just finished speaking when they heard a huge explosion coming from the kitchen. Bang! The group of Holy Water sect disciples jumped in fright and looked at each other in bewilderment. "What's that sound?" Xue Xiao asked in bewilderment. Yang Shirong slapped her thigh and hastily dashed toward the kitchen. "Friend, how are you?" Chapter 351. Cough cough a cough cough. A middle-aged man covered in soot and grime burrowed out of the kitchen ruins and hastily waved his hand at the Holy Water sect's master and disciples who had surrounded him. "Nothing, cough 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 cough, it's nothing. It's nothing, cough cough. Don't be nervous, cough cough cough." Although Murong Sun's expression was calm, her lips still twitched involuntarily. As expected, a dumbass friend was also a dumbass. She shouldn't have agreed to stay here with that dumbass. Wouldn't it be better to just find an inn to stay at? Why did she have to save on those 2 expenses? All in all, it would only take 1 night. Lu Yun covered half of her face with her sleeves and chuckled. "Looks like our dinner tonight is ruined." It's nothing, it's nothing. I'll go make some preparations. You guys wait in the living room first. The kitchen already blew up for you, so what else can you prepare?" Yang Shirong casually knocked the middle-aged man's head. Everyone's lips twitched, finding this scene comical. Then let's make a few racks and roast them simply. Murong Sun turned to Prince Emo. I'm fine with anything. Emo Lien smiled faintly. That's right, young Master Emo and little junior sister just happened to bring back a large basket of vegetables with meat and vegetables. How timely! Hence, the group of people busied themselves setting up the roasting racks, washing vegetables and picking vegetables. They divided up the work and worked extremely quickly. When night fell, the 3 large pots of stewed pork rib soup on the racks were already emitting white smoke, and the aroma assailed their nostrils. Arbor was afraid that there was not enough food, so he secretly took out more food from his storage talisman. Everyone ate very happily this meal. Halfway through, Murong Sun took out 2 jugs of wine from her inner world and drank with her 2 junior sisters. Under the night sky, the faint firelight reflected off the little girl's face. For some reason, clusters of fireworks lit up in the distance. The sparkling fireworks blossomed under the dark curtain, illuminating the night. Emo Lien propped up her chin with one hand, and her gaze landed on her little stoic's face. The little girl was holding a small bowl of soup in her hands, and she was drinking it sip by sip with her small head lowered. Her appearance was truly adorable. Occasionally, she would raise her head to look at the people from the sect. Her gaze was exceptionally moving. There was no longer any trace of coldness in her eyes. Instead, it was filled with warmth. But Arbor didn't know that this kind of night, where the master and his disciples drank and barbecued together, might not happen again in the future. Her gaze fell on her master, who was clinking her cup with martial Uncle Lu's. The 2 of them looked at each other and smiled at ease. At least at this moment everyone was very happy. Murong Sun and Lu Yun clinked their glasses and downed their drinks. Yang Shirong was chewing on a scalding pig trotter as she glanced at the 2 of them. The scene of her lips curling up was like a faintly flowing ink painting that took root in the depths of the little stoic's heart. Eternity was nothing more than this. Bang! The fireworks in the distance were dazzling, but they disappeared quickly. After the crowd dispersed, everyone went back to their rooms to rest. Only a small ember was left on the grill, burning faintly. The next day, when the sky was just beginning to brighten, everyone was ready to set off. They could only ride horses to the front of the great swamp. After that, they could only abandon their horses and travel on foot. A large wetland appeared before their eyes. The aquatic plants were lush, and there was a layer of black puddles underneath. The trees were crooked, and their branches were haphazardly extended. It was dark and damp. Caw! After a low and hoarse call, a strange bird with bald wings flapped its wings and flew over the crowd from a slanted branch. Chapter 352. Be careful, everyone, Murong Sun instructed and took out a wooden stick she prepared beforehand from her inner world. Everyone also opened their inner worlds and took out their pathfinding sticks before cautiously following behind Murong Sun. The group was silent and did not make a sound. Everyone's attention was focused on the swamp overgrown with aquatic plants beneath their feet. Knowing that the path would be difficult to traverse, everyone had already changed into tall riding boots. This great swamp was extremely vast, and the entire swamp was interwoven with withered branches and trees, so it was not suitable for mystic energy to fly. Moreover, the journey was too far. If they flew halfway and their mystic energy ran out, the rest of the journey would be even more difficult. Hence, everyone was prepared to cross the great swamp on foot from the start. Arbor was at the front of the group in the middle. She stepped on the soft mud and leaves as she trudged forward. After walking for a while, she looked up at the intertwined tree branches that stretched across the sky. These messy tree branches nearly blocked the entire sky. She really disliked this place. It was so gloomy that it made her feel uncomfortable. Her small hand landed in Prince Mo's dry palm. He squeezed her hand and quietly said, "If we're fast, we can leave this place in 3 days. There's a dense swamp gas above here, so normal flying mystic beasts can't cross it. Little Seven can, but he's still in closed-door cultivation. Weak Chicken should be able to do it too," Arbor thought. However, Weak Chicken's body is not as big as the Crown Prince's golden dragon. It'll probably be a bit strenuous to carry 30 people across this great swamp, and there might not be enough seats to sit on. But in the end, the little fellow felt that Weak Chicken was a bit unreliable. If something happened during the journey, she didn't know who she could cry to. Shit, there's a snake here. It freaking almost crawled under my skirt just now. It scared me to death. Chang Yushi screamed incessantly. Yang Shirong slapped the back of her head and reprimanded. You're a girl, so don't be so rude. Darling Qiao's entire body quivered. Almost like a conditioned reflex, she suddenly jumped onto Prince Mo and reached out to wrap her arms around his neck. The crown prince felt as if he had caught a hot potato. He did not know whether to hug the little girl or throw her away. Embarrassed, he met the three peak masters' murderous gazes, which looked like they were looking at a lecher. The group of senior sisters from the Holy Water sect all turned their heads and looked at the two of them with sparkling gossipy gazes. Something's wrong. Isn't little junior sister and this young Master Mo a little too intimate? TSK. At the moment of danger, little junior sister's first reflexive jump into his arms was already a huge problem. Put her down. Murong Sun immediately jumped out to break up the affectionate couple, and pulled the little girl to her side with a dark face. This stinky brat, don't think that she didn't notice that his arms were hugging her so smoothly. This probably wasn't his first time hugging her. Prince Mo coughed lightly and hastily walked past Su Shanshan and Xue Xiao to follow closely behind Murong Sun. Peak Master, you still have to lead the way, so it's not suitable for you to look after Jojo. Let me do it. After saying that, he pulled a certain Jojo back to his side as naturally as could be. Arbor did not have much of a reaction and merely rubbed her arm. Chang Yushi's words just now made her feel very disgusted. That sticky and cold thing almost crawled under senior sister Chang's skirt. Oh my god. Don't be scared, Jojo. Chapter 353. The youth bent down and whispered comfortingly into Qiao Mu's ear. If it dares to approach you, immediately roast it into ashes. Arbor looked up at the crown prince and reflexively clenched his fists. No, I'm not afraid of it. I want to beat it to death myself. Good. The crown prince praised the little fellow with a grin. I knew my Jojo would be fearless. Arbor exhaled in relief and felt his taut nerves relax a bit. Being grasped by the crown prince's slender fingers made him feel at ease, as if a type of energy was injected into him. Murong Sun's face darkened as she glanced at the youth. Damn brat, don't push your luck. It's already good enough that I let you come along, but now you're abducting my disciple right in front of me. This is simply preposterous. Don't be angry, don't be angry. Yang Shirong walked next to Murong Sun and chuckled as she fanned her with her hand. I've already gotten used to it. My disciple is so outstanding, so it's normal for everyone to want to steal my disciple. Who are you calling your disciple? Murong Sun roared. Seeing her two senior sisters daily quarrel again, Lu Yun helplessly rolled her eyes. She took out an umbrella from her inner world and leisurely followed behind them. Chun Hanzi muttered exasperatedly. Why are the two ant masters always at odds with each other? Doya spread her hands and said with a smile, it can't be helped. During the entrance exam, little junior sister was clearly brought back by second Antmaster, but eldest Antmaster snatched her back not long after. This is the way the two Antmasters get along. Before the other female disciple from Third Peak could finish speaking, she suddenly felt her body abruptly sink, and she involuntarily cried out in alarm. Mingxia! Chun Hanzi and Doya reflexively reached out and grabbed one of Mingxia's arms each. Their faces were slightly pale as they held on tightly. The others hastily rushed over after hearing the news. Prince Mo tightened his grip on the little girl's hand, his expression solemn. These quagmires can change their direction. It was clearly fine when they walked past, but when it was Mingxia's turn, she sank into the quagmires. Don't worry. Turn your body slightly to the side and maintain it. Murong Sun took out the rope Yuxian prepared from her inner world and quickly tied a knot around Mingxia. Murong Sun gathered her energy and leaped up, pulling Mingxia's entire body out of the swamp. However, what followed was a swamp crocodile with wet bumps all over its face, bearing its fangs. No, to be precise, it was a corpse crocodile that had mutated. Be careful. It's a level 3 mutant swamp crocodile. Arbor was shocked. He reflexively took out his crow repeating crossbow and shot an arrow without aiming. The black gold arrow pierced through the swamp crocodile's open jaw and flew out of its back, creating a hole that was neither big nor small. With a splash, the corpse crocodile was shot back into the depths of the aquatic plants. Mingxia stretched out her hand to hold onto a withered branch and hung in midair. However, her eyes were staring blankly at the corpse swamp crocodile that had been shot back into the water by her junior martial sister. She could not help but tremble slightly. She was just one step away from being bitten by the zombie crocodile. "Are you hurt?" Murong Sun asked anxiously. "No." Mingxia shook her head, still shaken. "Be careful of your surroundings," the little stoic expressionlessly shouted. The black gold arrow that had just been shot out of the corpse crocodile's mouth returned to her with a fishy stench. Chapter 354. Arbor slightly stretched out his arm, and the crow gold arrow flipped in the air. With a light flick, he shook off the dirt on the arrow and steadily landed on the crow-repeating crossbow. At this time, pairs of small eyes emitting a faint red light peeked out from the underbrush around the swamp. There were about 20 or so zombie crocodiles that were rapidly swimming towards the crowd. Truly disgusting things. The holy water sect disciples all stood back to back and struck balls of mystic energy at the floating zombie crocodiles. Wherever the white light flashed, the zombie crocodiles were blasted into pieces by the mystic energy. After all, this group of people were all level 10 mystic cultivators and above, so they did not expend much mystic energy to deal with these level 3 mutated zombie crocodiles. However, they needed to be careful and not let the zombie crocodiles get close. If they were bitten, it would not be a laughing matter. Although 20 or so zombie crocodiles looked like a lot, each of the 30 holy water sect disciples only had to deal with 1 or 2 zombie crocodiles. Moreover, there were also 3 peak masters present, so the crown prince basically did not have to make a move. The battle was nearing its end. Murong Sun blasted open the head of the last zombie crocodile, and abruptly turned to look at the disciples. Her gaze finally landed on her youngest disciple. "Are you all alright?" "We're fine." All the disciples relaxed slightly, but their gazes were still vigilant as they roamed around, guarding against any zombie crocodiles that slipped through and suddenly burrowed out to attack the crowd. Arbor lowered the crow-repeating crossbow in his hand and said with a solemn expression, "Be careful. Don't get bitten by these things." Everyone nodded in succession with a heavy heart. "Continue forward." Murong Sun turned around to lead the way. Yang Shirong also lost the mood to joke with her senior sister and quickly followed. "Alright, be careful and keep up with the group. Let's go quickly." Lu Yun had the disciples follow in a single file, and she ended up bringing up the rear. After this zombie crocodile attack, everyone's expressions turned solemn, and they were very cautious as they continuously probed the surrounding water plants with wooden sticks. After walking for a whole day, they were all in a state of full alert. By the time night fell, everyone was dragging their feet, feeling very tired. Murong Sun gazed ahead. It was still a vast and boundless wetland with lush trees, seemingly without end in sight. Because the night had completely shrouded this area, the group speed was obviously much slower. The occasional hissing and gurgling sounds in the swamp made the hairs on their bodies stand on end. The little stoic had already involuntarily drawn close to the crown prince, and her tiny figure was about to hang on to him. She didn't know why, but every step she took in the night felt wet and slippery. It was as if there were countless snakes and insects crawling under her feet, causing her arms to inexplicably have a string of small goosebumps. His body suddenly felt light, and his feet had already left the soft wet ground. What greeted him was the faint scent of the youth's body. The goosebumps all over her body disappeared in an instant. She felt as if her small body was soaking in a warm hot spring, clean and refreshing. The sound of the wind and the sound of the insects was particularly clear in the silence. The crown prince lowered his head to look at her. That pair of slightly bright phoenix-like eyes emitted a faint light under the night sky, which was extremely beautiful. "Sleep if you're sleepy." The crown prince chuckled and whispered into her ear, "You're growing right now. If you don't sleep, you won't be able to grow tall in the future." Chapter 355. What nonsense! She had to continue growing taller. The little stoic harumphed lightly and blinked her tired and sore eyes in this night where she couldn't see the moon or stars. She really did feel a bit sleepy after hearing this fellow's words. It was mainly because she had been highly focused this entire time. But now that she was enveloped by a reassuring aura, she felt even more tired after relaxing. Be good and sleep for a bit. I'll wake you up when it's daybreak. Don't be afraid, I'm here. The little fellow batted her long eyelashes, and her large, bright eyes closed slightly. I can hold on. Emolienne chuckled softly and lowered her head slightly. She reached out and gently stroked her small face. Sleep, little fellow. You're still young, so there are many things you don't need to force yourself to do. Be good and sleep for a bit. It'll be daybreak soon. Arbor opened her small mouth, and her slightly closed eyes weakly opened, before her drowsiness overwhelmed her. A trace of astonishment flitted through her mind. Apothecary. The crown prince, this guy was actually an apothecary. He only lightly stroked her, and that faint fragrance of medicine wafted into her nose, causing her to sink into drowsiness. Since her rebirth, this was the first time she discovered someone with a special ability like an apothecary. Their every breath carried a trace of medicinal power. High-level apothecaries could instantly make small wounds on a person's body disappear. In her previous life, apothecaries were also her friend's research subjects. He madly researched the mysteries of inner-world growth, and was even more passionate about researching apothecaries' bodies. Back then, there were actually 2 other people who were locked up in the other 2 small black rooms with her. However, they were locked up separately, so she didn't see those 2 people face to face. She could only hear 2 different painful whimpers when the cruel and inhumane experiment began. When she was carried out of that small iron cage by Master, those 2 people had already been tortured to death, probably because she didn't hear their voices for a long time afterward. She lived on humbly and was treated as a tiny pet, living under Master's meticulous care. Before Arbor fell asleep, she opened her mouth slightly and softly called out Emolienne. Her eyebrows furrowed uneasily. Prince Emo was such a strong young man. It was impossible for him to be captured by that pervert to be experimented on. Impossible that this kitten-like cry touched the young man's heart, and he subconsciously lowered his eyes to look at her. The little fellow's little hands were tightly clutching onto his clothes in his sleep, and he didn't seem to be sleeping very well. Emolienne leaned closer to her and gently blew at her. Looking at the little fellow's slightly relaxed eyebrows, she smiled with satisfaction. When Arbor opened his eyes, what appeared in his dazed eyes was the darkness of intertwining branches. His mind was still a little muddled. However, when he heard Master Murong Sun's furious roar of, "Damn brat, hurry and put down my disciple," he regained some clarity. Peak Master Murong had been holding it in for an entire night. He was so angry that his liver hurt, and if it wasn't for the fact that her child needed a good night's sleep, she would have beaten him up long ago. Although this damn brat had good intentions, she couldn't allow him to freaking take advantage of her little disciple. Hug. Look at how practiced he was. He was clearly used to hugging her. Prince Emo helplessly put down the little girl. He was afraid that her legs would go limp after sleeping for an entire night, so he reached out to support her soft waist. Jojo, good afternoon. Chapter 356. The young man's bright phoenix eyes held a faint smile, which rippled in front of her eyes. She actually slept all the way until noon. The little girl took off her cloak and threw it back to the youth. She couldn't resist covering her face. Then she angrily glared at Emolienne. It was all this guy's fault. How much medicinal power did he give her to make her sleep all the way until noon? How was this appropriate? If people asked in the future, "How did you feel after going to the Great Swamp?" she couldn't tell them, "Haha. I almost got out of the swamp after sleeping, right? Did you sleep well?" The youth put away the cloak with a chuckle and rubbed his hand against her face. "Did you dream of me?" "Dream your ass. She could see you day and night. If you didn't let her off even in her dreams, would there still be justice in this world?" When Emolienne saw her turning her head away in a huff, she couldn't help but sigh softly and reveal, "What a pity that Jojo didn't dream of me" expression. "Stop here and rest for a bit," Murong Sun grumpily shouted. Her knife-like gaze scraped Prince Mo's body before she hastily walked over, and pulled her little disciple over. Everyone was worried about the swamps that could move at any time at night, so they didn't dare to rest in order to avoid falling into danger. After walking for a day and night, everyone didn't eat much. Even the 3 peak masters were a bit tired, let alone the disciples. Everyone found a slightly drier place and patted a few more pieces of cloth under their bodies before sitting down to rest. Lu Yun said, "Let's rest for an hour first. There's probably still half of the journey left. Sleep if you want to after eating. I'll call you when it's time," Yang Shirong also said. All the disciples took out dry rations and water from their inner worlds and silently took 2 bites before leaning back against each other and closing their eyes to doze off. The little stoic sat next to her master and nibbled on a snack before looking up at the crown prince. She wanted to ask him if he wanted to sleep, but, "Disciple, hurry and eat. Rest a bit after eating. You're still young, and you've been cultivating in the sect all this time. You don't know that people's hearts aren't what they used to be. There are too many bad guys in the world, so you have to protect yourself." Murong Sun turned the little fellow's head back and irritably glared at Prince Mo. The latter had an innocent look on his face. Bad Silver was definitely not him. When the hour was up, everyone got up and set off again. Other than Arbor, all of the Holy Water Sect's disciples were great mystic cultivators level 10 and above. Although the journey was very arduous, a mystic cultivator's body was very valiant, so it wasn't a problem for them to last several days. The group hurried on for another half a day. Along the way, they encountered danger of falling into a swamp twice. Both of them were resolved by the Peak Master. This swamp is a nuisance. If a person falls into it, they will sink deeper and deeper if they use their Xian energy. Doya used the wooden stick in her hand to poke at the water plants. That's right. That's why eldest martial uncle prepared so many ropes in advance. Fortunately, Master and the others are accompanying us to Xixia Valley. Murong Sun and Yang Shirong suddenly stopped and raised their hands, gesturing for everyone to stop. Everyone's nerves, which had just calmed down, tensed up again. A series of clanking noises came from the distance. Occasionally, it was mixed with the sound of mystic energy flowing and the crowd's shouts. Murong Sun and Yang Shirong jumped onto the tangled branches that extended diagonally to the left and right and carefully looked at the source of the noise. "There's a group of people over there. They seem to have encountered quite a bit of trouble." Chapter 357. Not only was it not a small problem, it was simply a life-threatening problem. More than half of the 100 or so people surrounded by the zombie crocodiles were dead or injured, and the remaining 50 or so people were still bitterly holding on. The reason why this team was in such a tragic state was not only because they encountered more than 200 zombie crocodiles. In addition, they just so happened to run into the zombie crocodile king. Oh my goodness, the zombie crocodile king was the size of a small mound when it laid there. Its entire body was covered in lumps, and it revealed a mouthful of eerie conical fangs when it opened its mouth. There weren't many mystic cultivators in the team, only about 20 people. How could those ordinary guards withstand the attacks of the zombie crocodiles? They became delicious food for the zombie crocodiles in minutes. "Be careful, Princess Mi!" Just as a small zombie crocodile was about to bite Xiaomi's leg, a youth rushed out from the side and hurriedly brandished his mystic energy, repelling the zombie crocodile. On the other side, a youth in a brocade robe with a grave and stern face slightly spat out his 3-foot-long sword and took the zombie crocodile's head. A white light flashed, and an ugly zombie crocodile's head was severed and flew high into the air. "TSK, Bailey Shi, look at you. You're so violent that those zombie crocodiles don't dare to approach you." The youth who spoke was about the same age as Bailey Shi, about 17 or 18 years old, and was dressed in indigo robes. Brother Chia. "Bailey Shi, your cousin is calling you," the youth in indigo robes said with a mischievous smile. "Don't talk nonsense. TSK. Bad temper. Even if you don't like to talk, I don't like to talk either." The youth in indigo robes stopped, and his gaze followed the cluster of withered branches. He curled his lips and laughed loudly. "Hey friends over there, can you come out and help? If we can't hold on, those big things won't recognize you as relatives and will still run to your place to bite you." Murong Sun knitted her brows. The path ahead was a path they had to pass through, so they definitely could not go around it. Master, let's not go. Wait until they're almost done fighting. Then we'll go and finish off 2 more strikes to collect the supplies. The little stoic's icy voice involuntarily made the 3 peak masters and all the senior sisters twitch their mouths. Even the 2 handsome youths fighting couldn't resist looking back. Could this be the legendary looting a burning house? Friend, it's not nice of you to do this. The 2 youths couldn't clearly see who was hiding at the other end of the wetland. They only sensed that there were quite a number of people in that group, and there were a few particularly tyrannical auras among them. You're kind? You're in the same team, yet you don't care about the life and death of your teammates. Why should others help you? Arbor sneered. The 2 youths were clearly handling the corpse crocodiles with ease, but they were lazy, waiting for the corpse crocodiles to pounce on them before slashing with their swords. Those corpse crocodiles weren't stupid either. They had a bit of intelligence. Seeing that the 2 youths were tough to chew on, they all ran over to attack the other ordinary guards in the group. This resulted in the death of more than half of the entire team. Since they didn't care about the lives of their subordinates, why should they, as outsiders, meddle in other people's business? It wasn't like they had nothing better to do. TSK, judging from your voice, you're young, but your words are icy and unreasonable. You must be a little girl with mediocre looks. Just as Wei Nanfeng finished speaking with a mischievous grin, he saw a beam of red flame shooting towards his mouth. Chapter 358. Fuck. What kind of person acted so viciously, throwing a flame at his mouth at the slightest disagreement? Wei Nanfeng withdrew his playful expression and abruptly turned his body to dodge. A mystic energy circled in his hand and struck the flame. However, the flame was only slightly deflected by his mystic energy and scuttled past his collar, scorching a clump of his hair in an instant. Wei Nanfeng's smiling baby face abruptly changed color. Lowering his head to look, half of his indigo-colored sleeve had been burned away by the falling flame. Simply preposterous. Wei Nanfeng's baby face completely sank, and his eyes narrowed with a trace of coldness. Who is it? Emolian simply held the little girl's hand and slowly walked out of the thick thickets of the wetland. Stopping at a distance, she threw Wei Nanfeng an icy glance from afar. Wei Nanfeng's gloomy baby face instantly turned from dark to sunny, and he suddenly beamed with joy. Oh, it's Crown Prince Lien. I was wondering who was so bold to actually dare to burn this prince's sleeve and hair. TSK, so it's Crown Prince Lien who has graced us with his presence. Crown Prince, why are you in the mood to leisurely walk around the great desolate swamp today? Could it be that Northern Moa's government affairs have been properly handled? I heard that a small base in your Northern Moa was attacked by a zombie horde some time ago, and many civilians died. As the Crown Prince, you should be quite busy. Bang! The little girl raised her slender right arm without any warning and suddenly shot out a black gold arrow. With a whoosh, the black gold arrow pierced through the air and headed straight for Wei Nanfeng's uncovered mouth, completely freezing and distorting a certain person's baby face. Wei Nanfeng's hair stood on end, and he hurriedly activated his defensive mystic weapon. His entire person cut a sorry figure as he did a perfect roll to the side, barely dodging that black gold arrow. He reached out to lift up a strand of his long hair. Just as he was about to shout, he heard a buzzing sound from behind his head. It was so close that all the hair on his body stood up. Fuck! This arrow can turn. It's coming again. Bailey, she suddenly made his move. His grave and stern face was expressionless as he clamped the buzzing black gold arrow between his 2 fingers. He was able to clamp the black gold arrow with just the strength of 2 fingers. When this ability was revealed, everyone present revealed shocked expressions. The little stoic raised her voice slightly and shouted coldly, "If you dare break it, I'll have you die." As soon as he finished speaking, the profound energy in his entire body increased explosively. As his black hair fluttered, his entire body leaped high into the air and flew onto a horizontal branch. A circle of talismans suddenly appeared around his body. The profound guiding talisman array was a new talisman array that she had just learned. Within 15 minutes, it could completely absorb the profound energy between heaven and earth into one's body, in an endless stream to replenish one's rapidly depleted profound energy. Wei Nanfeng slightly opened his mouth. His baby face was filled with disbelief. What did he see? This cold little girl with picturesque features and jade-like skin was no more than 12 or 13 years old. She actually used a talisman array as soon as she made a move. Could she be? Talisman Master? Bailey, she replied expressionlessly, but he loosened his grip, allowing that black gold arrow to fly back to the little girl's side with a whoosh. Arbor reached out to catch it and carefully examined it. Upon seeing that it was undamaged, she coldly glared at Bailey Shi and slowly withdrew the profound guiding talisman array around her body. Emolian lightly leaped to the little girl's side and carried her down with a grin, patting her head. Wei Nanfeng opened his mouth and only asked after a while, "Little girl, I don't think I have any grievances with you. Why are you so ruthless in your first move? You're not allowed to talk about him." Arbor turned her small head and glared at him coldly. Chapter 359. The Crown Prince stared blankly, then his brows slightly curved as he laughed softly. His mood was so happy that he wished he could fly. If it weren't for Jojo's honorable master glaring at him from the side, he would have picked up the little fellow and fiercely kissed her stoic little face. However, in the next second, the Crown Prince was met with Wei Nanfeng's 100,000 cannon fire. "You still have the freaking face to laugh. I almost died. Who asked you to offend my Jojo? Serves you right." The Crown Prince lightly snorted as he held onto Arbor's small hand and walked around them. Arbor slightly wrinkled her brows as she coldly glanced at Wei Nanfeng and Bailey Shi. Seeming to have sensed something, she lifted her eyes to look at Prince Emo. "These two people of inferior character are both your friends?" She now recalled that Wei Nanfeng's tone of voice just now was more of mockery and not sarcasm. To be able to use such a familiar tone to speak to the Crown Prince, they were naturally friends. Furthermore, Wei Nanfeng also referred to himself as this prince, so he must be a dignitary from some country. Without a doubt they were friends. Emolian lowered his head to meet the little fellow's cold gaze. His smiling face suddenly froze as his heart inexplicably thumped. Wei Nanfeng immediately grinned from ear to ear as he moved forward. "What do you mean by inferior character?" "Of course, little fellow, you've really insulted the wrong person. I'm good friends with your lineage. We won't get to know each other unless we fight. We'll be friends from now on." The Crown Prince's heart skipped a beat. He practically wanted to immediately stop him from continuing to speak, but Wei Nanfeng quickly finished speaking. "Who's your friend?" Arbor fiercely pulled her small hand out of the Crown Prince's palm and turned to face Wei Nanfeng's handsome face. Raising her hand, she fiercely struck him with a wave of mystic energy, forcing him to retreat. "I, Arbor, have never had any friends. No friends." The little girl's angry shout, coupled with her cold and murderous gaze, seemed to be swearing an oath to the heavens. In an instant, everyone present was petrified into statues. The word friend was a hurdle in her heart that she couldn't get over. It was like using a sharp dagger to fiercely stab her heart. She hated hearing the word friend the most. Didn't like it. Who are you? How dare you use such an attitude to yell at my brother Rong?" Xiao Mu's extremely ferocious gaze that was brimming with sternness instantly shut the mouth of a sweet 16-year-old girl who was rushing over. "Jojo." The Crown Prince suddenly felt that his voice was slightly dry. He reached out in a panic to grab her small hand, but in the next second, she mercilessly slapped his hand away. At that moment, the Crown Prince felt as if the sky was about to fall. He didn't feel pain in his hand, but he felt pain in his heart. For the first time in 18 years, he felt flustered and helpless, and even a little baffled. Why did this happen? Why was it like this? He was fine just a moment ago. He had finally managed to break a little of this little fellow's shell, but in the blink of an eye, she had wrapped herself up again, not allowing anyone to step even half an inch into her territory. "You're all cut from the same cloth." Arbor coldly glanced at them. In the hearts of these bigwigs, everyone other than them was an ant. However, the bottom line that Arbor guarded in his heart was, "At least when we're teammates we can fight side by side and die together, but we absolutely won't stab each other in the back." "How can you have the face to say that you're my, Arbor's friend? Scram immediately." Arbor then pattered to Master Murong Soon's side. "Master, let's go. We're not on the same side as them." Chapter 360. That's not it. Hey little lady. Hey. Wei Nanfeng chased after her with a baffled expression. He turned his head to sneak a glance at the Crown Prince, but he was frightened by the cold and furious glint in the Crown Prince's pitch-black pupils. Lien. No, I don't know what the little lady is angry about. How was his character bad? His character couldn't be too good. Bailey she stood on the side with his arms crossed and suddenly explained, strictly speaking, we can't be considered teammates with those guards. They're only Princess Xiaomi's guards. What? The little lady is angry with Lien because of those little guards that died? Just now, he and Bailey she indeed didn't try their best to slaughter those zombie crocodiles. They were just playing around with those little things in a joking manner. The little guards' deaths couldn't be blamed on them, right? Xiaomi insisted on bringing so many normal guards with her on this trip. He already told her that normal guards were useless. How could she blame him and Bailey she for this? Who exactly was protecting who? As masters, was there a need for them to protect a few weakling guards? Don't follow me. Mo Lien vented her anger on the two of them, and hastily followed the holy water sect's departing group. Wei Nanfeng's baby face also darkened. How could he not follow? There was only this one path out of the great swamp. Soon after, the holy water sect's group slaughtered their way into the zombie crocodile horde, sweeping everything before them as if they were chopping vegetables. Mo Lien followed and ferociously struck the zombie crocodile king with her purple flames, venting her stifled and agitated emotions. The zombie crocodile king that was still incomparably ferocious immediately shriveled up under the flames like a ball that was suffocating. Jojo. Mo Lien hastily went up to explain, but before she could get close, Su Shanshan blocked her with a cold expression. Young Master Mo, little junior sister's mood might not be very good right now. You should not disturb her for now. Su Shanshan's expression was slightly displeased as she extended her hand to block Mo Lien's path. Senior sister Young Master Mo, don't say any more. You should walk a bit further away with your friends. I feel that junior sister doesn't really want to see you guys right now. Su Shanshan's sword hilt rudely pushed Mo Lien lightly. With this push, Mo Lien felt like she was 10,000 steps away. Little junior sister was so sensible that it made one's heart ache. Even so, they still made her unhappy. Su Shanshan and the other senior sisters immediately lost their good impression of Prince Mo Master. I once had a team. The little stoic crouched next to a patch of aquatic plants that had been completely dyed muddy by blood. She held a branch in one hand and subconsciously poked at the mud on the wetland. There are body cultivators, mystic cultivators, superhumans, and normal people. Every one of them is very useful. Even if they are just ordinary people, they are all working hard for this team. Later, the environment became worse and worse, and survival became more and more difficult. Everyone slowly died, and in the end, only me and a teammate were left. The little stoic suddenly smiled. However, Murong Sun felt that her disciple was better off not smiling. This smile was too desolate. Her eyes were filled with a black fog, and she could not see any light or hope. At least when we're teammates, we shouldn't stab each other in the back. We should support each other, right? The little stoic suddenly cried. Murong Sun had never seen such a sorrowful expression on the stoic's face. Seeing her disciple's tears fall down in strings, Murong Sun's heart ached to the extreme.